Welcome to our Living Ceremony Earth Day workshop, Permaculture Folk and Indigenous Solutions for the Earth, with our beloved elders of the Four Directions and other representatives. My name is Mari Fix McEwen from the Yew Tree Clan Ewing. Lineage lands in Kilfinnan and Ulster, Alaba, residing in the unceded territories of Tatviam, Tonga, Keech, and Chumash tribal peoples. I was recognized as an elder for my people in 2015 by Maestro Hermano Vidal, or Vidal Aya Sanchez, and his Council of Peruvian Elders, and was given the task to bring my people back to their indigenous roots, as well as to unite the indigenous people from the Four Directions. That is one of the focuses of this group, Living Ceremony, to educate people on how to return to nature and their true nature, to work together and make what our elder Patricia Ann Davis calls life-affirming choices. By the way, if you're listening to this workshop via video and live now, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ancestors of the Four Directions. The link will be in the chat, and you can also find it on YouTube. And a big thank you to Cynthia Klatt Cunningham, who came up with the idea to do this particular workshop and to feature videos. Also, thank you, Cynthia, Ava, and Ingrid for your tech support on this broadcast. And thank you to Patricia Ann Davis, Indigenous Spirituality Channel, that we're broadcasting simultaneously through on the One World Mighty Network. In this workshop, we will be viewing a series of short video clips. We will discuss them as well as discuss Indigenous knowledge and creative solutions to the dilemmas and opportunities posed. Solutions to bring our world back into balance internally and externally, both personally and collectively. This workshop is dedicated to the process of healing, understanding that we need to see any issue in context of the whole to understand its root. It is a lack of understanding this that allows us to make errors in judgment, hold prejudices, and not perceive from a true place of wisdom. As with any true healing in society and within ourselves, and Patricia will be talking more about this in a few minutes, we need to identify and see what is out of harmony, name the out of balance condition, identify what is true instead, then purify, and then replace that which is out of harmony with that which is in harmony. And Patricia will be giving a short presentation before the whole workshop on this process that she brings so lovingly to the world. In the last few workshops, we have been exploring how colonialism, capitalism, and racism have jeopardized our lives and the ecosystem of this planet. We have identified how different strategies and systems have been devised by some and put into place to create a divide between people, create privilege, and take control. As we look at these systems, we see that there has been a lack of wisdom and understanding among those who have devised them, as they have resulted in insecurity, food scarcity, monocropping, theft of land, marginalization of Indigenous and colored people, racism, lack of meaningful culture, soil depletion, toxicity, and ecological devastation. This has placed us all squarely on the hamster wheel of constant work to pay rents and mortgages from stolen land. It has left us with a system that was built by slave labor. It's left tyranny and devastation in its wake, and we continue to suffer from it, barely coping, as we wonder when it is coming for us next. Not only has that created the perpetrator and victim archetypes, but it has also created an atmosphere of defense and denial. In this workshop, we will both continue looking at that fact, as well as start the process of finding our way into healing. by identifying ways to be in right relationship with Mother Earth, right relationship with our true nature, and ways to be in right relationship with each other. Here we find the solution to all of our problems. The perception that we are disconnected from life around us, a perception which leaves many using the earth rather than being in sacred relationship with her. This also leaves us coping with the overarching system that has created a commodification of our very life, with winners and losers. Even if you are, quote, wealthy and seemingly on the upside of this system, what happens to one is truly happening to all here. Look at the environment. So the winners and losers model is actually a farce. So what are we going to do with all this? If there is a will, there is a way, as life is inherently in harmony when left to her own devices. So it is both a return to truth, an alignment to the fact that immediately and radically changes our understanding and behavior. Remember, sacred relationship is not just about doing prayers and ceremonies. Rather, it is a whole way of living that is responsible, humane, and ethical to the very core. As we go through this workshop, please trust this experiential process. Just to let you know, the chat will not be open for much of the workshop for security reasons. If we open it later, it will only be for posting your email, posing questions, and possibly answering questions. Please make note if anything comes up for you during the workshop, as you are an important part of the whole and the solution as we strive to work together. There may be time for participants to share and ask questions depending on how all of this goes, as this particular workshop will be conducted in a more fluid way than usual. We will now begin with ceremony, sanctifying the space and calling in the directions and sharing prayer. Grandfather Fire, Grandmother Earth, we unite you sacreds in holy union, that you may bring about purification in your midst. Take in this purification. Let it purify our space. Let it purify all of us, so that we may drop what is not real, what is not truly ourselves, and be willing to look deeply into the shadow for all concerned. Purifying the space for this wonderful workshop, so we may bring about an internal aha and understanding. And I pass to Cynthia to call in the directions.
Teram terasteri karanki. I call in the east, Svad, and the element of air, Povietsva. I call in the south, Podnia, and the element of fire, Ogień. I call in the west, Zachad, and the element of water, Voda. I call in the north, Hunats, and the element of earth, Gemya. I call in the above and below, Nad, Pod. and I pass to the center.
And I ask Deborah to give us our song, our prayer, or our song, whatever she is bringing.
Greetings, everybody. I was going to have a different song. I'm going to chat a tiny, just for a brief moment before I do the song, because I need to tell the story. I was going to do a different song, but as the week passed, everything that came to me was water in all aspects of what water is, life, birth, healing, cleansing, geopolitical aspects of water, and the intelligence of water. Water is a living being, as many know. But with things as they are, water this time was really knocking it. And, another part of my reflection was, Indigenous ecological knowledge, as well as, other folks in the world starting to realize the connection of spiritual and science. The human body is 60% water. So, we got to be working on that vibration all the time and realize. Anyway, so I'm going to do the water song. And I'm going to do the Algonquin water song. And for those of you that don't know about this song, it was written for all women of all nations and all races by Irene Mawati for Grandfather William Commander's 2002 Circle of All Nations gathering. This song is expressing loving gratitude for the water and to raise consciousness and connection of women and Mother Earth to our connection of the greatest gift, water. The hopes of Mary and all those involved with this song was that many will learn this song to raise connection and awareness that will ripple out to create both a spiritual and environmental shift on our home, Mother Earth. So look it up. You can learn it. Whenever you're using water, you're taking a shower, you're doing your dishes, you're getting a drink of water, you're watering your plants. Remember to thank that water and sing the song to the water. Nibi wabo endayan, akini sque nibi wabo, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Nibi wabo endayan, akini sque nibi wabo. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Nibi wabo endayan, akini sque nibi wabo. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Nibi wabo endayan, akini sque nibi wabo. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, So that song is telling us that water is the lifeblood of Mother Earth and of our own bodies in giving thanks. I can't even know English.
Thank you, Deborah, Auntie. I'm going to do a prayer in Gaelic also. Tuair doing al Spiritu Sant, agus I got sent neart, agus I neart tishkint, agus I tishkint ulus, agus in ulus in kirt, agus in ulus in kirt an grafwi, agus in grafwi a grad o na ba fwad, agus in grad o na ba fwad an grad o al spirit, agus gach mahas avan in lesh. Grant, O Spirit, your protection, and in your protection, strength, and in your strength, understanding, and in your understanding, knowledge, and in your knowledge, the knowledge of justice, and in the knowledge of justice, the love of it, and in the love of justice, in the love, we grant the beauty of all existence, and we love the beauty of all existence. And in the love of all existence is the love of Great Spirit, and in the love of all goodness. Under the divine law of our primordial nature, the truth, love, justice, and harmony, the understanding of the law of interdependence, I hereby open living ceremony with our elders of the four directions. This opening is a continuation of what is essential in ourselves. Here we seek to find, make aware, and embody the truth of our nature, the clearing of all delusions, and the caretakership of the very life we are in service to. In this congruence, we attain peace in ourselves and in the quadrants. Hello and welcome, my relations. Let us all close our eyes, listening deeply with our hearts so we may open the door to healing within ourselves and between us all, knowing that even if our discussion triggers wounds, defense, feeling misunderstood, or pain, that what is arising is a signal that Spirit is calling these things up for reevaluation. Let us look deeply into the mirror of what our elders and our brothers and sisters experience in compassion and understanding, seeing in it the reflection of our own hurt, pain, needs, wants, and aspirations. Knowing there may be obstacles to overcome and misunderstandings. However, with love, all things are possible. So I dedicate this prayer and this workshop to this process. With enough love, we can get through anything to understanding and common ground. If we look boldly at the shadow within us and in the outside world, we may find that it no longer holds sway over us, and that we free ourselves from any illusions or subconscious patterning. I call to the heart within us that knows no fear, that seeks to set things into harmony, that dares to walk and live by the path of greatness for the healing of earth and all her peoples. May we look to this heart and know that together we have the power, no matter what it may look like or what we have been told. The power to listen deeply to each other, the power to step into this alignment with each other for the good of the whole. And may we have the courage to take that path and make it a reality. Please feel yourself expanding into the whole of life, holding hands with each other of like heart and intention, dropping unneeded defenses, the outmoded, any hardening of the heart, any concepts in the mind, looking courageously into the mirror, forming a new way that is in alignment with love and life itself, your original nature. I now place our individual and group prayers for love and healing into the fire as we begin. Please put them into prayer. Bless all these prayers, Creator. Duhas, all my relations. As you listen and participate in this workshop, stereotypes and generalizations may be referred to like white people do this or native people do that, the elite, the powers that be, etc. Know that these generalizations are markers of tendency in society, that we are working with them just to make some headroom into larger issues. Please hold an open stance while this happens, knowing that there is a greater goal that will be addressed as we have our eye on the big picture here. It also helps us to start redefining any cherished beliefs and clarifying definitions that may be usurped, outmoded, or accepted unconsciously. Before we continue with our workshop, I want to introduce our modality of sharing circles. Its purpose is to give voice to all of our needs and ideas, knowing that any erroneous ideas presented by participants will eventually gain clarity from dialogue and reflection, so we can eventually come to a place of true understanding. This is not a space of cancel culture, as you can lay your souls bare here. We just ask you to be open to the insights shared in the hopes that we all come to love and understanding for all concerned, with all needs met. If you are triggered or offended at some of the material because it might be disturbing or disorienting, I invite you to notice what you may need that has been triggered by the feeling. As an example, if you feel that you're being indirectly accused of something, you might find that you have a need for fairness or to be seen for who you are. Make a note of this. Likewise, if you hear something that triggers you and what your brothers or sisters share, I invite you to look at the heart of what they are expressing and why. What are they needing by saying what they have said? Compassion, consideration, understanding, fairness, to be seen, safety for their children. Sometimes it takes patience to get to the heart of a matter and a period of uncomfortability. So we encourage each person to challenge themselves and take the time to look carefully at each thing presented while looking within, loving yourself and others through the change. Ultimately, we trust you will take care of yourself. Our brothers and sisters are hurting on this planet. In fact, we are all hurting too, but we may not yet realize it. I had the recognition that if I didn't take action, and that's sometimes in the form of a deep reflection within to start, that I am complicit on some level, as the hurt of one is the hurt of all. We are all intrinsically linked. We are all responsible for each other. We can't just let each other sink into the pit thinking, oh, well, it wasn't me this time, and go about our daily business. Besides being stressful, knowing that it might be coming for you next, that's not love. Something dies inside when it looks away. Something shuts down. Something copes that shouldn't. Something stiffens and puts a blindfold on, collapsing at the enormity of it all. And it may come knocking at our own door soon. We wonder why we have lost all that joy and spontaneity of our youth, if we ever had it. Going along with the society's atrocities is perpetration on ourselves and others. We're not meant to live this way. That is letting the mess spread. It's an honor to do this repair work, this shadow work, this looking within, this purification. It's not a burden. It's what is called for now. Look around you, it's obvious. It's time to free ourselves, to see the truth, and then walk into it. So here we are. What are we going to do about this? How are we going to recreate this world so we can all thrive? Let's explore, let's cry, let's get real with one another. Let's cultivate the deepest of relationships, where we can truly hear each other all and all needs are met, where we heal each other from all the shame, pain, and dysfunction, even back through our forefathers. No one left behind, not even the earth and her creatures. A true, unadulterated act of love to end all the madness. We now start with the heart of this workshop. Wildfires, highly fluctuating temperatures, global aridization, little nutrition in the soil, ecosystem collapse. Scientists predict Earth is home to around 10 million species. Currently, science has estimated 1 million species are at risk of extinction. And one of the environmental lawyers I know said that almost 100 species are going extinct by the day. I don't know if that's exaggerated, but it's quite a bit. Suicides and mass shootings, people are experiencing mental and physical health crises, chemical contaminations and runoff, antidepressants in the water supply, and psychotropic medications normalized. What are we doing with life that we need all this? Cancer on the upswing, EMF frequencies, smart meters, cell phones, facial recognition, state-to-state passports, monitoring, chips in brain, GMO trees and food, monocropping and lack of food security, playing God and creating a mess of radiation, pollution, poisoning, and birth defects. How do we navigate the world when it seems to have no real interest in compassion, sustainability, and health? How do we refrain from cancel culture so we can talk deeply about anything and look at the situation more clearly, impartially, and truthfully? We hear this as all inevitable. What makes that so? And who is touting that narrative? And after we have looked, how do we apply Indigenous principles to bring it back into balance? What can we do about all of this, and how do we start together? I'm going to call on our beloved, esteemed Indigenous elder, Patricia Ann Davis. Could you briefly outline for us what happens in a sharing circle, identifying the condition, the emptying, and what it is all for, and how we go about doing this?
Thank you, Mari. Greetings and welcome, everyone. I extend to each and every one of you a warm, heart-to-heart hug from my fireplace to your fireplace and the hearth of your home. In this prepared presentation and teaching from the domain, I'm calling this domain Dene Hojo. Dene is holy people. Hojo is the all-encompassing concept of holiness with H and wholeness with W. So this is the Dene Hojo natural order spirituality law. It is in the context of Indigenous spirituality. It is cross-cultural, it is intergenerational, it is inclusive, and its universal and practical application also can be translated into any language. It's from oral tradition throughout the generations and centuries. And according to my tribal tradition, I will introduce myself by informing you of my bloodline, first my maternal and then my paternal parents and grandparents. And I do have a ceremonial name that is only used in our a ceremony for me personally. And there's a vibration to it, and then I'm saying, it's me, Creator. And that's because there's a vibrational meaning to it, but it does convey that I have no enemies, that I'm a peacemaker, and that I value relationship, I value friendship. So there's no hierarchy or patriarchy. There is no hierarchy or matriarchy concepts in our language worldview, because we're matrilineal. Every child is born through the water of the mother, the sacred water of the mother. So this divine feminine, we are calling Twa Bashishchena. So Twa is water. Twa is it. The water as medicine. Twa Be'ina, the life-giving qualities of water. And Twa Bashishchena is we're all born through the sacred water of our mothers. This is our divine feminine life giver and nurturer. And this is our life task in a healthy, helping teamwork relationship with the protector provider of the male, the father. That is Nayet Nezgana. That is who ensures, listen to me, the male life task as protector provider is to ensure there's no hunger, poverty, sickness, and premature death, such as war and addiction and sickness and so on. My spiritual family and all of my relatives, we are each a child of all nations in our sacred self, within our sacred place in the universe. And of course, you heard my, I call it my colonial boarding school name, Patricia Ann Davis Inshia Adone, a Mississippi band of Choctaw Inshle, Tachi ni Washalchin, Chata Dene, Ada Shache Kia Ani, Ada Shanala Ado, the Ne Beaja Inshle. And this translates to the fundamental basis of equality among all humane beings. That is, each and every one of us is a precious child of Creator within creation synchronistically. And so the Indigenous ceremonial change process that Mari referred to, I will just name the sequencing. There is a sequencing in the natural order. And you, Mari, have named the out of balance condition. You have named the global crisis out of balance conditions. And then we identify the root cause and deconstruct the root cause that keeps and maintains the out of balance and perpetuates the out of balance symptoms. We must identify the root cause, deconstruct it, and then from there, we empty in a safe and supportive environment. That means we make the correction in a safe and supportive environment. No judgment, no punishment, and no condemnation. This is a safe and supportive environment. And then we have group consensus to design creative solutions. So the videos and the discussion can unfold in that co-creative way, power within us to have power with each other. So let us begin with the topic of save the soil. and the fact that the condition of the soil today is not sustainable to grow food as it was in the past. Are we alert about that? Are we awake about that? That the soil itself is, the soil of Mother Earth is not healthy to grow food, is what has been discovered recently. So in the English language, we use the words soil and dirt, and then there's the phrase, we came from dust and we shall return to the dust. And so I'm going to refer you to someone I found on the internet who is East Indian. You might have come across his work, Sad Guru. He said, the earth under you is dying. And so I see by your expressions, you have heard from him, and he's traveling all over the planet saying, we must save our soul because it's our very body. And he's using the word, our very body, the conscious planet. So Conscious Planet is a global movement to initiate an approach to soil and the planet, so that governments and all nations and the citizens and the people of the whole earth would design policies to revitalize the soil and the ecology. Now I move to Dineh Bazad, which is the Holy People's sacred language and words. And the Holy People are our collective primordial ancestors. So listen carefully, because I'm going to say the vibration and explain to you how this is whole brain thinking. English is a trade and commerce language, but whole brain thinking is it connects everything, that how we exist in interconnection and interrelatedness with all creation, with each other and all creation. And so the word zil, Z-I-L, zil, that word means mountain. And also the word zil, if I said let's see, if I said zilej, then I'm saying mountain dirt or mountain soil. If I said Genepetzil, I would be saying the spiritual strength of all the people, you see? And so our physical body, and I'm going to name some percentages here, that our physical body is the constituted, composed of our sacred Mother Earth at 12%. So when we say Zeflej, our actual body is mountain dirt. So remember, I said it means spiritual strength and it means mountain. So I'm saying words and vibrations that resonate to connect us to our very practical and realistic way to understand the fundamental basis of equality among all of us. Also, the common name for our medicine, in English medicine bundle, it is called Zilej. And I can't go into the detail about that right here, but the reason for it is that it represents something as a reminder to take care of and steward, that also is the family, the community, and our nations, to take care of each other. And then when we take care of ourselves, we're taking care of others, and other people take care of themselves and they're taking care of us, and we're all doing our part. And then I'm calling it the emotive body, which is the water at, and Deborah said 60%. I think it's 60 to 70. I have I have 72%. So we're both saying the same. We're both saying a lot of water, that we're stewarding the body of water within us. And I tell youth, you want to be a water protector, do not put alcohol and drugs in your body, because you're mostly water. And that is a water protector. So that's a alcohol and drug prevention among the youth. Be a water protector from birth throughout your whole life, and only drink water, and watch out for the chemicals that are in the water today, and which there's no more minerals and no more life energy within the water. Do you realize that the minerals and the life energy is not existing in the water, the bottled water and the water from your kitchen sink and so on? You're all permaculture people and environmental people. Maybe you know all of this. The main thing is that the air, the in-breath and out-breath, it's not our air either. We think it's our air. Somebody can't say, well, there's a meter here. You have to put coins in this meter because you're not only you're drinking my water and you have to pay for it, but you have to pay, you're breathing my air, so you have to put coins in this meter because you're breathing my air. I mean, that's where we're going with this consumerism and commercialize and commodify people to the extreme for profit. See, okay, so then so that's our very body, our own body, every one of us. And then we're living on our sacred Mother Earth, of course. We're saying planet, but Nahasan Hima is a living being, just like your own mother, or we're mothers and grandmothers. We're alive, we're breathing, we're existing, we're aware, we're spiritually participating in the whole symphony of life, giving life. And so water, of course, is the ocean, the river, the lakes, the streams, the male and the female rain. And fire is the radiant sun, the fire in the fireplace, the electrical fire in the house, in our spine, in our brain synapse. And so the permaculture topic that we are moving into, I understand, is land management. Land management, that the goal is to benefit life in all its forms. So that ought to start with our own body, to nurture and take care of ourselves, to balance. We cannot let the earth, water, fire, and air go out of balance. We cannot have temperature going higher or lower. We cannot go without water. We cannot go without food for the body. And yet we're not taking care of our body because we're not taking care of the environment. And Indigenous people worldwide were the steward. We took care of the earth, water, fire, and air for generations and centuries. And then it takes care of us. It's a reciprocal obligation, reciprocal responsibility. I'm just here to remind you as a messenger about this stewardship that begins with our own body. So the values clarification for humanity question is then that's our real constitution, not the piece of paper, right? That says, in the pursuit of happiness, I can trash the world, I can trash people and trash the world. So the values clarification is, how will you, in your own habitat, in your own, how would we inspire and motivate the stewarding of our own temple, of our own habitat, of our own sanctuary? That's the values clarification here. And you will move into videos and discussion and possibly question and answer. So I thank all of you. Thank you, which is thank you, my spiritual family and all of my relatives. And I hope you really embody the facts that I'm telling you. This is not a belief system or religion or philosophy. It is real. And so when you speak and you are breathing this oxygen and out the carbon dioxide in the trees, that's how we take care of the trees and grow the trees and replant the trees. These are some suggestions that I have here. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. That was so eloquent. And it really shows us the relationship of also how Indigenous language mirrors the true relationship of reality versus a conceptual language that doesn't have relationship in it, that sees things as a commodification, that uses things, and it doesn't say, I am you, I am earth, I am. It doesn't have that. So when it doesn't have that subconsciously and consciously, we don't have that on the forefront as we speak of our mind, of our heart, knowing that is tied together, knowing that is truth. And with our languages having been desecrated, earlier languages that have that built in, to rebuild this into our consciousness and our language because it is actual in truth.
Mari, I have one more example. Just
Okay,
one more.
yeah, absolutely.
Just for example, Tsetdiyin is a holy rock people. Non-Tsetdiyin is a holy plant people. Natagidiyin is like the holy bird people. I could, go on to Sotdiyin, the holy star people, and then us, we are Diyin Dene, the holy, the precious child of Creator within creation. So just to bring that, to emphasize what you're saying.
Yeah, seeing that all nations, all the bird nation, the rock nation, that they're all intrinsically alive and in relationship at that level because they are within us and outside us. And as we see this picture of the earth outside us and what's happening, what in turn is going inside of us, because it's an outpicturing of the internal. Eternal. I'm sorry, internal. I was correct the first time. So, all right, we're going to be moving to. We have more than a few videos we're hoping to show, so we can watch, and we'll watch a few in succession and then share after that. Please keep your topics when you share on topic. Whether you share a reflection of what needs to change in society, what someone you know or your clan is doing about the particular issue, like if we have an issue of water as an example, or any related things to the ecology, or any practical solutions and opportunities that present themselves. So if we're dealing with water, generally go into how you're dealing with water or what you're seeing about water in general. So Cynthia, can we go to sharing the first video and start the first group?
Open to criticism, and there are genuine things to criticize. There are issues with where the materials for renewable power comes from. There are issues with the way some of the big environmental NGOs behave, and we should be completely upfront about those issues. Instead, you filled that film with falsehoods. The film claimed that renewables don't pay for themselves in carbon terms, that they're just as bad as fossil fuels.
You use more fossil fuels to do this than you're getting benefit from it. You would have been better off just burning the fossil fuels in the first place.
And that is flat out wrong. For instance, solar power, you need 1 unit of fossil energy to make and maintain the panels, from which you get 26 units of renewable energy. Wind power, the ratio is 1 to 44. It's completely untrue to suggest that the ratio is 1 or worse. You claim that it's impossible to have more than a certain amount of renewable energy on the grid. It's completely untrue. You tried, rightly I believe, to finger some of the corrupt deals that some big environmental NGOs have done. But you chose exactly the wrong targets. You actually fingered someone who doesn't take a single penny from his campaigning work and tried to paint him as some sort of corrupt despot. But worse than all of that was that you provided us with no solutions. Oh, except for one thing, mass die-off.
Without seeing some sort of major die-off in population, there's no turning back.
The only concrete proposal in your film was that there should be a mass die-off because the problem was population.
There are too many human beings.
Population growth continues to be not the elephant, the herd of elephants in the
We
room.
really have got to start dealing with the issue of population.
I actually am scared. I lose sleep over all of this.
Now, population growth is what people reach for when they don't want to face structural and systemic problems such as capitalism. Population growth is what people reach for when they want to kick down rather than kick up. Climate breakdown and ecological breakdown are, above all, the result of consumption. Before the pandemic, the rate of consumption growth worldwide was roughly 3% a year, and that had been pretty constant for several years. The rate of population growth is 1% a year, which has declined from its peak in 1963 of 2.2%. So it's less than half what it once was, and it's continuing to fall rapidly. Does that mean that population growth has 1/3 of the impact of consumption growth? Not at all. The greater part of population growth is happening amongst the world's poorest people who consume very little. And so what we see is a phenomenon of comparatively wealthy white people saying we're not the problem, our consumption growth isn't the issue, it's those people breeding. They are the problem. This claim is inherently racist. Rich white people blaming poor brown people for an environmental problem which is mainly created by rich white people. This emerges from a very long-standing discourse, a discourse which really arose with colonialism and was used as one of the justifications of colonialism. Those people, those black and brown people, they're savages, they're barbarians, and they threaten to overwhelm us because they're having lots of babies. So we have to put them in their place, and we have to make sure that civilization, which basically means white people's societies, triumphs over barbarism, which basically means black and brown people's societies. This was the roots of the eugenics movement. This was a major inspiration to the racism that is still with us today. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any concern at all about population growth, because it definitely has some local issues, and it's definitely the case that all women should have full and free access to reproductive control, to family planning, to control and ownership of their own bodies. Absolutely. All that is essential. But it is completely wrong to say that it is the main cause of climate breakdown and of ecological breakdown. It's a continuation of this long-standing moral panic about brown and black people breeding too much and overwhelming white people. And I believe we should call it out for what it is.
Can we go to the next video?
Computer copies no enyedi, TV copies enyedi, fridge copies enyedi. Ahana mimi wa me pro ntimi save. Enye nim bibia mimi akwala. Bibia bebe bia scrap ye say kura ye say bibia. Scraps ni ade enye de enye. Ade enye.
Okay. The second video was about taking our e-waste, all of it, to Ghana, and that they burn it, and it has poisoned the ecosystem there. The water's so toxic that if you swim through it, a person swam through it recently and died within a few minutes. This is all our computers, all our components, that we don't really recycle them in the United States. We just ship them out. So we get the quote unquote benefits, not really. And then they go over there and they don't have any ability, because of monocropping and just doing certain things, and people not having, they don't farm anymore all their different crops. Suddenly they're reliant on us for jobs. And so everybody's forced to, in a sense, to go work in this just to make ends meet. So I would like to open it up to participants. I don't know if Steve wants to come in and talk at all, or someone that would like to kind of say how they feel about any of what has been shown just now. Does anybody want to come forward? Okay, is that Patricia? Okay, Steve, yeah, we'd love to have you come in.
Hi, thanks for doing this. I was very impressed with what Georges Monbiot was saying, and I think he's spot on in many ways. Although some of the folks, I'm acquainted with some of the folks that were pictured in the interview, and I hope that they were their full points of view were taken into account. I'm thinking about. Gosh, his name escapes me right now, but the fellow up in Marin County who he was very involved in the permaculture movement himself, and he's a blogger right now. So anyway, but I think, you know, and was the other speaker who is a permaculturist, is she going to be with us later, or did that fall through?
Supposedly she will be. She had an emergency because someone gave birth on the reservation and they're running supplies back and forth to them. So I'm hoping she comes in soon. And we had another elder actually that had an emergency, and another elder that had an emergency today. So we're 2 elders down and waiting for her to come in.
Yeah, well, I can speak briefly on the topic of permaculture, with the caveat that I am not a certified permaculturist. I've taken online courses recorded by um, one of the founders of permaculture down in Australia. Um, I have practiced forest gardening. I have a very small backyard and front yard, but I'm doing sort of intensive forest gardening. And I can speak to that a little bit if people are interested. But mainly I see permaculture as a way of aligning spiritually with the crisis, the environmental crisis that we're in. And if, people are willing to go out and get their hands dirty, even if they're not, on a tenth of an acre or less than a tenth of an acre, you can't grow a lot of your own food, but you can get your hands dirty and you can learn what it is to live in symbiosis. You can watch the insect population recover when you only use organic gardening methods. You can watch the consequences on, saving uh, what do they call it? Well, saving the monarch butterflies. There's quite a campaign to do that, and but I did some stuff to try to support the monarchs, and it was ill-informed because I planted a non-native variety of milkweed, and it bloomed, and then I got monarchs to come and eat there, and I really enjoyed interacting with those monarchs and dancing with them, and but come to find out that because it was non-native variety, and I am not in the migration path, I'm in the overwintering part of and so it was ill-advised, and the Xerxes Society website was very informative, and so I took that out and found out that the right way for me in an overwintering site to support migrating population was to plant other nectar producing flowers, right? And so it's a great way to experience what's going on in nature. Just try to get your hand in it and do the right thing. One of the things as I developed my interest in gardening over the years, producing my own food was one of the goals, and I have a forest garden would emphasizes palm fruits, you know, plums, apples, pluots, but I've also got some citrus and lots of lavender and berries, native berries. So one of the things I'm trying to do now, though, is I kind of went too far in the direction of non-natives. Where I live, it's the Mediterranean climate of the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've realized that I'm a native of California, but I'm not a Native American, as it were, right? So planting the plants that were calling to me, it was overlooking the indigenous plants of the area. And so one of my goals lately has been to, as time goes on, reintroduce native plants and try to nourish the indigenous insects and other wildlife, and get right get right with the spirits of the land I'm growing up in.
Yeah.
So that's what attracted to me to your podcast, and so thank you for that chance.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to get into food production a little bit later with some of the videos. I want to make a quick comment about this video, or these two videos. Is the first one, the question also is, I know that Michael Moore did a film, and I actually liked it. But I did like some of what this man had to say about the fact that some of society will tend to point at other people as the problem rather than see the true consumerism that's going on. And also, maybe Michael did not show in the video, his video, that some of the green alternatives are producing more energy than he says they are. However, there's something really important here, which I wanted to bring up, which is some of the green alternatives are creating their own monsters and problems. So the thing is, sometimes when we just try to replace our conveniences, we're not really getting at what needs to happen just to keep feeling comfy and everything. Maybe that's not the path. So I want people to kind of think into that. Is it the path that you have to keep on replacing something to have your comfort? Or is the path more that we don't really need that comfort in the way we thought we did? Maybe it's actually deterring us in a certain way, because as wind power, some of these things can't be recycled properly afterwards, or they're creating their own problem afterwards, like creating all these solar panels, even though the house that I'm in has solar panels on top. But there's a lot to think about with all this. And I would like to go to Patricia, who has a comment, and then we'll go to the next video after. Oh, Cynthia has a comment too. So
just really briefly, what holds everything together? We talked about earth, water, fire, and air. We're composed, that's our constitution. We're living in this environment. So we must have reverence for ourselves and reverence for the environment, but also what holds everything together. In Sanskrit, it's called Akash. That is the etheric web, or the web of life. And then it's the fabric, it's the tapestry of life that holds us all, holds everything together. So look at all the ways of the bombing and the burning these electrical waste, any kind of waste, nuclear waste, what we're putting into the atmosphere of what we breathe. What does that do to the web of life, the etheric network that is life itself, our connection, our interconnection? So that's what I thought of when I saw the first two videos.
absolutely. And what is it doing to our lungs? I mean, what is it doing to their lungs, but what is it doing to the lungs of the earth? I mean, our lungs, the lungs of the earth, just like you explained, Patricia, the whole thing is reverberating into and out of itself. And to start in do something out of harmony results in something just keeping on being out of harmony. It's like we walk one little step out of harmony, and then, oh, we can go just one more little step out of harmony and one more little step out of harmony, and then suddenly we're out in left field doing crazy things. Cynthia, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to make a comment that a lot of the green solutions aren't really building in this issue of how racism is kind of embedded in the issue, and how capitalism in America, we're responsible for the vast majority of the pollution, and people tend to focus on, well, what about overpopulation in China or India, and they need to cut down how many children and then we'll be fine. And it's not just finding some new technology to be able to extract more resources. We also have to look at what is out of balance and who is being affected. And I just wanted to add that piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one more thing too, just we see, we witness, we know that it's picking up, Cynthia, bridging to that we think that more power is more power is going to give us the solutions when this more power that's destructive power is not real power. It's actually it makes things worse. And so we have from the street to world governments, we have this ganging up. We have ganging up in order to pirate someone's land and resource. Now that's a root cause that's been happening for thousands of years. So it's the simplicity of it is that we don't see that in the street attitude and behaviors of just picking up a glass bottle, breaking it, a bat, a knife, a rock, nowadays a gun and rifles. That is actually the same thing going on at the global level, crisis level, even at national or local level, three-piece suit and tie and a white shirt, it's still street gang attitude and behaviors, which is I win and you lose, and it's also devaluing, dehumanizing in such a way that says eugenics and population control is for people of color and even women historically. So that's another angle here that I wanted to mention. It's really a mega topic what I'm talking about, but I hope I'm conveying that this we can simplify it by looking at just street gang attitude and behavior throughout all of history to invade and genocide and plunder, which is mass murder and theft, and then justify it in some way. So that's we don't want to admit that. We'd rather just do the blame shifting, and the blame shifting doesn't solve anything. We need to follow a sequencing of naming it, identifying the root cause, and then deconstructing the root cause, and then design the co-creative solution collectively.
Yes. Cynthia, can you cue up the new video? And if anybody has anything to add while we're going along, just raise your hand, put your hand up, and we'll see what we can do. And okay, and Maham. And generally right now, I'm going to start asking people to kind of, unless you're Patricia, or maybe someone commenting about permaculture or something technical, to try to keep the comment to about 1 minute. Maham, would you like to say something? We need to move on to a lot of videos, so maybe if you could keep this one short, but okay.
So, hi. So there is some enzymes that actually eats up the plastic, and it in science has already proven it. There is some enzymes that, but I just don't know why they don't go through that direction of using those type of enzymes to eat. I came across that type of enzyme when I was 9 years old. And it's really fascinating how, I mean, the plastic probably about 2 inches, the enzyme eats it up in less than 3. So, it's mind-boggling how scientists haven't moved into that.
Well, also
way.
it's interesting, also from what you're saying, also sometimes there's a counter interest that makes us not want to do something. So let's say there's I'm going to just make it theoretical. Let's say we have something that'll get rid of cancer, as an example. There's a counter interest in selling certain kinds of drugs or doing different kinds of things. And because the person has in the idea that they're winning from that and gaining a lot, then they don't want to be the solution to mankind, as an example. But that doesn't mean cancer doesn't have any other causes. I'm just saying that sometimes it's a conflict of interest, they say. But I don't know if that has to do with this plastic thing. Cynthia, are you ready to, can you hold that, Steve, so we can go into the next videos? And does that work for you, Steve? Yeah, okay. All right, great, because we have a lot of videos and these are very interesting videos. So, all right, Cynthia, can we go to the next videos?
Here we are in the Faroes, a remote community up in the North Atlantic. We have been living or fishing for hundreds of years. We have no production of chemicals, but we are exposed to a lot of chemicals. They came to us without our asking us. We have seen negative effects on the health of our children. We want to see their development because we have always been a bit suspicious if these substances can have any impact on the endocrine system. This is a price to pay for what the international society have done without thinking about the consequences of just releasing new substances.
What we have seen here in the Faroes is that this is part of an absolutely global contamination that may have started in the 1960s without us being aware of it.
The PFAS is everywhere.
PFAS have contaminated our food supply, and PFAS can also accumulate in soils, in sediments.
There are chemists who have sampled rainwater on the Antarctica and in the Himalayas. What do they find in the rainwater? PFAS. It's all over.
They don't just stay in the environment, in our water, in our soil, but they get into living things, and they stay in us. It's like a ticking time bomb in the body as this stuff is building up and coating all of our organs and staying there year after year.
We have analyzed thousands and thousands of human blood samples. We never met one that did not contain PFAS.
We have all paid a high price due to large corporations carelessly dumping known toxic chemicals.
It's even stranger.
So PFAS are synthetic man-made chemicals. PFAS stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. It's quite a mouthful. It's an acronym that stands for a family of thousands of different chemicals. The most recent estimate from the EPA says that there are over 14,000 different chemical structures that they recognize to be PFAS. They share the same chemical property of having many carbon-fluorine bonds. These carbon-fluorine bonds are some of the strongest bonds in organic chemistry. So for this reason, PFAS have also been called forever chemicals because those carbon-fluorine bonds just really don't break down.
But the part where this story gets really strange is looking at their origins, because these chemicals came from the Manhattan Project, which was a secret project to build the atomic bomb in World War II. So after the war, companies began experimenting with these chemicals. One company had a scientist who accidentally splashed some of it on their canvas shoes. They discovered the chemicals had stain-proof and waterproof properties. That company was 3M.
Because of their unique chemical properties, they're added to products to make them non-stick, grease-proof, stain-proof, and water-resistant.
You know who's going to win this contest. Teflon is so much easier to clean than stainless steel or uncoated aluminum.
These chemicals went into some of these companies' most famous products, like 3M's Scotchgard and DuPont's Teflon. These chemicals were really at the dawn of what we think of as the era of better living through chemistry, and they sort of epitomize this attitude of consumers and companies that everything we do could become more convenient.
On virtually any fabric. Use Scotchgard fabric protector and let your cup runneth over.
And consumers are still really enjoying the fruits of this era. When you look around you, there are so many things that are stain-proof or waterproof, like pizza boxes that are grease-resistant or microwave popcorn bags. They're in industrial applications like plastics, semiconductors. They may even be used in solar panels and wind turbines. They're in a lot of products that it's not even clear why they're there, like toilet paper or dental floss. But as time has gone on and more scientific research into them has progressed, we've realized that they also have a downside. The fears about the water intensified by what would come out in the 2010s. Minnesota sued 3M for damaging the state's natural resources with its dumping of PFAS. And in doing so, a mass of the company's internal documents were released. What they revealed has been described as a scientific cover-up.
Seeing the documents that in 1975, 3M was told, we think we're finding your chemicals, these perfluorinated materials, in the blood of the general U.S. population. And to see what was going on internally, 3M started testing its own workers and found, yes, this chemical is building up in the workers who are exposed to this chemical.
They were seeing studies of these chemicals on animals with disturbing effects.
It shows that in 1997, 3M gave DuPont a material safety data sheet with a label that said cancer, warning, contains the chemical which can cause cancer. But 3M removed that label the same year and for decades sold PFAS without warning the public of its dangers.
You see the companies internally debating, do we say anything? Do we tell the government? And unfortunately, what they decided was no.
Some of 3M's documents even showed that there had been a sort of whistleblower inside the company named Richard Purdy, who had said the company wasn't telling its customers about the risks of these chemicals, and he resigned. He referred to 3M's PFOS, or PFOS, as the most insidious pollutant since PCBs.
Some of the most notorious PFAS are PFOS and PFOA. So these are two PFAS molecules that have a carbon backbone with 8 carbon atoms. These are the chemicals that so far have raised the greatest concern. These are the ones that show up most frequently in the environment. These are also the ones that show up most frequently in people's bodies. They have half-lives in blood of years, which means that it would take years to decades for the levels in your blood to go down to an unmeasurable level.
The 3M company had actually had one of its own scientists sit down and calculate what would be a safe level in human blood. And that scientist had calculated, and even used the word safe on the headline of the document, that the safe level for this chemical in human blood would be no more than 1.05 parts per billion. At the time, in the late 1990s, the average level of that chemical being found in the general U.S. population's blood was 30 times higher than that.
In 2018, 3M settled, but there was no admission that it had done anything wrong, that there had been a scientific cover-up, or what the real risk of these chemicals was.
3M will pay $850 million to settle claims it contaminated water in Minnesota for decades.
It's hard to talk about in our community because, like, everyone loves 3M, right? There's not a person I know personally from 3M who isn't a stellar individual.
Forever chemicals even existed. What we're seeing is not only are we finding all these potential human health impacts, but we're seeing them happening at lower and lower dose levels and exposure levels. We recently had the Federal Environmental Protection Agency come out and essentially say, if you can detect this, it's of health concern.
The safety advisories keep getting lower and lower, from 70 parts per trillion for both PFOA and PFOS in drinking water in 2016. The EPA lowered it to just 4 parts per trillion each. That's less than a single drop in an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Each time those levels are lowered, it means that more people live in an area where contaminated water is thought to be a concern. A recent study found that as many as 200 million people are drinking water with more than the acceptable levels of PFAS. That's around 2/3 of Americans. States are taking action, and one of those states is Minnesota. They're not taking any chances with the PFAS that are in drinking water, and to do that, they're trying out new types of water filters.
PFAS is out in the environment, and it will spread as far as the water can spread it. It's left the barn. It's out of the gate. This waterway is carrying the PFAS right where the air meets the water, and these little bubbles are sort of signs that there might be PFAS in that water. PFAS has a hydrophobic and a hydrophilic nature to it. So if you think about it as like a caterpillar, the head of the caterpillar is hydrophilic. It wants to be in the water. And the tail of it wants to be out of the water. It's hydrophobic. So it kind of surfs along. And so it actually has that property that behaves the same way out in the environment on its own, or whether you're putting it in the water or on a pan, it's going to behave the same way. So Mother Nature is saying, here's your PFAS. It's in the foam. And so we want to take advantage of that and do the most removal we can. It's called the SAF. It's surface activated foam fractionation. We fill those full of contaminated water, and then we are able to physically remove the PFAS by foaming it, adding air into the system. And then we pull the PFAS off of that foam again, and that's where we get a small volume of very high concentrated PFAS containing liquid. Thus far, the test has shown us that we can remove roughly 92 to 98% of PFOA and PFAS. It could run at least at 60,000 gallons of water treatment per day. And this is just one small system. So this is effectively the test to see whether we can scale this up to very large volumes. And can we apply this in a permanent location to reduce the PFAS in the environment altogether?
It's not just 3M or DuPont who are responsible for PFAS pollution. There's about a dozen companies that have produced PFAS around the world. Highly concentrated levels have been found in Europe, Japan, and Australia. It's become a multi-billion-dollar problem globally. Like the US, a lot of these sites are places where the chemicals are manufactured or sites where other companies use them. One of the most widespread sources are military bases and airports, where firefighting foams containing 3M's PFOS were sprayed right into the ground.
Chemical companies didn't just do away with PFAS, they replaced them. One of the most studied and the most known is a chemical that was made by DuPont and its spin-off Chemours for Teflon.
Instead of making C8, they started making C6. something we now call Gen X. They renamed it. Now Gen X is being found in drinking water supplies. And what did we see? Gen X caused the exact same 3 tumors in rats that PFOA, the C8, did. Exactly the same. Liver, testicular, pancreatic. Red flags went up within the scientific community saying, wait a minute, we need to be really paying attention to the rest of these PFAS chemicals, these replacements. Even though they may be chemically different, they've got a lot of the same toxicity and share a lot of the same characteristics. Maybe we ought to be addressing them all as a group, as a class. And that's what we've seen now emerge, is the only way we can get around this one at a time regulation is to address all of them within a group. There could be thousands of additional PFAS chemicals now out there in our environment.
Rob Bilott is pursuing another class action lawsuit against a number of producers of PFAS. It could potentially involve the entire population of the United States.
We have more than enough evidence. It's time to move forward and act to protect the American public. Thank you.
Just think about this. If there really are 12,000 or more PFAS, how long would it take us to get all of these studies done that these manufacturers are saying that we would need? We'd all be gone by the time that happens. If the companies are going to say there isn't sufficient data, they should have to pay to have the studies done. How do we short circuit this? So I brought a new case in 2018 in federal court in Ohio, and the companies immediately sought appeal, saying this was too big. Nobody had ever had a class action this large, involving millions and millions of people. And our argument was, nobody else has contaminated the entire United States and has put chemicals into the blood of everyone in the country. This case is only this big because the harm is this big.
Cynthia, please stop this video. I want to move to the next video. And what's also would also be shown is that this goes from mother to child when you breastfeed, and it transfers in breast milk, and so that's how you pass it on. That's the only way to get it out of your body in some ways, that the mother actually dumps it directly into the child. So this becomes a big concern because you see it being passed on. It's not just with the mother. So, okay. And we're going to another video that relates to this subject in a way.
Who's been trying to answer this question on this book that my mom says she read to me as a baby. I don't remember it, but my mom says it's true. That all changed a few years ago when a chemical company, the largest chemical company in the world, asked me to use my expertise in studying frog hormones to try to understand if the chemical, their #1 selling product, a weed killer, atrazine, if it interfered with their hormones somehow. Long story short, we examined the African clawed frog in my lab, we exposed them to this chemical atrazine, and we showed things like this. And these are testes, and you don't have to have a PhD or be a frog expert to see that there's a difference between the control and the exposed animals. The control testes, if you look at it under the microscope, is full of sperm soldiers ready to go. The atrazine-treated gonad or testes, the testicular tubules are filled with cellular debris. What's more is if you look at the young developing larvae, you often find sometimes, these are the kidneys, if you're not used to looking at frog gonads, that this is an individual, though, that has testes, then it has more ovaries, then it has another testes, then it has more ovaries. One pair will get you in enough trouble. This guy, this situation is certainly not typical of amphibians. There are fish that are naturally hermaphrodites, but not amphibians. We later showed that some of these animals grow up, even though they're genetic males, to become completely functioning reproductive females, even though they were genetic males. We showed that in other species, the gonads look like this. So those are the testes on the top, and all of that junk in the trunk on the bottom, those are all eggs that are bursting through the surface of this male's testes. Now, I showed this to the Environmental Protection Agency because I thought they'd be interested. After all, it's the #1 selling chemical in the world at the time. And they said, well, that's not really an adverse effect. that would stimulate us to reassess the chemical. Now, my wife tells me that there is nothing more painful in life than childbirth. I'm gonna have to give her that. But I would guess that a dozen chicken eggs popping out of my testicles would have to be at least in the top 5 most painful experiences. The EPA doesn't think so. I thought more about why this might happen. So for example, if this were your testis, you should make testosterone. Testosterone's a portmanteau. You know, I learned that word at age 49. So when you put 2 words together like smoke and fog, you get smog. Twist and jerk, you get twerk. Testosterone means testicular hormone. It's literally the male hormone. But we hypothesized that this atrazine turned on an enzyme aromatase that caused the testosterone to be converted to estrogen. And if you're a male, that means that you're using up your testosterone so you don't make sperm, but it also means that you're making the female hormone when you shouldn't be. So then I started to think, we published that in Proceedings in the National Academy of Sciences and Nature, very prestigious journals that'll get you a tenured professorship at a place like UC Berkeley. But journals that, as my mom says, how important can it be? Barnes and Noble's never heard of them. And I started to think, though, about how my work might imply things beyond frogs. So this is a pond in Lake Nabugabo in Uganda, where I started to think that this agricultural runoff might not only affect the frogs and the fish, but also the other animals that are drinking out of the water, including the humans that collect their drinking and cooking water from this same source. Because see, we all make estrogen in the exact same way and use it in the same way. The connection to contaminants in water might not be so obvious for us. This is my village. But things like Erin Brockovich's story and things like Flint, Michigan remind us that we don't necessarily have the resources that we think we have, the clean sources of water. A colleague of mine showed, because I don't study humans, I had to work with other people on this, that if you look at men in Columbia, Missouri, and compare the atrazine in their urine, men who have atrazine in their urine have a low sperm count and can't get their wives pregnant. And by the way, this is the same amount of atrazine, 0.1 parts per billion, that we were using to chemically castrate and feminize our frogs. Another colleague showed, and I've mashed the data down now, because these are atrazine levels of men who work in the fields in California, and these are atrazine levels of men who apply atrazine in California. 2,400 parts per billion. They have 24,000 times the atrazine in their urine than we use to chemically castrate frogs and fish. 24,000 times what we know is already having a negative impact on men in Columbia, Missouri. One of these guys could pee in a bucket, and I could dilute it 24,000 times and use the atrazine in their urine to chemically castrate and feminize 24,000 buckets of 30 tadpoles each.
If you are a woman at the point
Then a little boy who likes frogs learns phrases like environmental justice, because most of these individuals are Latinx or in California, Mexican American. And then I thought about the impact that increasing estrogen would have on humans, because the atrazine has the same effect in human cells. If you take human cancer cells, and we've done some of this work, that don't normally make aromatase or estrogen, and give them atrazine, they start making estrogen, just like we've shown in fish and frogs and rats and reptiles and in birds. What's more is if you look at prostate cancer, there's an 8.4-fold increase in prostate cancer in their factory where they make atrazine in a community that's 80% black, 80% African American. There's studies showing that there's correlations between atrazine in their drinking water and breast cancer incidence in women in Kentucky. And that's just a correlation, but their own laboratory showed in 1994 that if you give rats atrazine, you increase the incidence of mammary cancer or breast cancer above animals that aren't exposed. This is an interesting problem because breast cancer, the #1 cancer in women, is estrogen dependent. And this aromatase that I've talked about produces the estrogen during breast cancer that stimulates those breast cancers to grow and divide and turn into tumors and spread. In fact, the role of aromatase is so important in breast cancer that the #1 treatment for breast cancer right now is a chemical called letrozole. It works by knocking out aromatase, decreasing estrogen, so that even if you have cancerous cells, they don't grow and turn into a tumor. That drug, though, has to work against the 80 million pounds of atrazine that we're using every year. That's the #1 contaminant of drinking water that does exactly the opposite. I got in trouble because I pointed out that Novartis Oncology in the year 2000 offered treatments for cancers that range from breast cancer. So the same company that gave us 80 million pounds of this contaminant associated with breast cancer was also selling a chemical that does the opposite to treat breast cancer. Yeah, they weren't too happy about me pointing that out. I became concerned. I'm just a little boy who likes frogs, but I became concerned because if you look at the top 13 cancers you're going to get in this country, blacks, African Americans are more likely to get 11 out of the 13 and more likely to die from 13 out of 13. Biology? My colleagues who are experts in cancers tell me that less than 30% of cancer can be explained by genetics. That means that when the doctor tells you that you're going to get breast cancer, more likely if your sister, your aunt, or somebody in your family has it, they're not telling you you have bad genes necessarily. They're telling you that you've been exposed to the same crap as the rest of your family. Because if you're a minority, if you're an immigrant, if you're first generation, if you're low income, you're more likely to live in and more likely to work in areas where you're exposed to chemicals that we know are associated with adverse health outcomes. What's more is, with the exception of HeLa cells, the cancer cells that we use to study cancer don't come from minorities. So even if we find the cure, Coleman, it may not be applicable to people who would need it the most. So I think what's happened is my interest in this aquatic organism has taught me a great deal about this aquatic organism. Because we all start out as aquatic in the amniotic fluid. And these chemicals that I study in my tadpoles can cross the placenta. In fact, we now know that your children will be exposed to over 300 synthetic chemicals before they leave the womb. And most of them, we have no idea what the biological impact is. For atrazine, we do know from rats, which are a proxy for us, that if you give rats atrazine, an EPA lab showed those rats are more likely to have an abortion. Of those rats that don't have an abortion, the sons are born with prostate disease. Of those rats that don't abort, the daughters are born with impaired memory development, such that when they grow up, their offspring experience retarded growth and development. And it was these studies that moved me to most, that made me realize I can't just be a little boy who likes frogs. Because see that rat on the bottom? That rat on the bottom never saw atrazine. The rat on the bottom was affected by atrazine that its grandmother was exposed to. The rat on the bottom never saw atrazine. The rat on the bottom was affected by atrazine that its grandmother was exposed to. So when I think about my little girl, my son, the fact that my grandchildren, that your grandchildren, could be affected by chemicals that we're using today, it moved me in a very different way than just a little boy who likes frogs. It's just a correlation, but we already know, studies have already been done by the Center for Disease Control and others, that if you get pregnant during peak atrazine contamination, you're more likely to have babies with birth defects, including malformed genitals in the male babies. The EPA has acknowledged this, but they say, quote, a monetary value is assigned to disease impairments and shortened lives and weighed against the benefits of keeping a chemical in use. A monetary value. If you look at California, I'm often giving this talk outside of California, we're the 5th or 7th, depends on who you talk to, largest economy in the world because of agriculture, not because of tech or Hollywood. We produce 50% of the U.S.'s food. Half of the U.S.'s food comes from California. As a result, we use more pesticides than any other state, and 90% of the workers are Latinx. If I put in red here the top 10 counties for agriculture, these are the counties, the 30% that makes us the 5th largest economy in the world. What if I plot onto that the 30 poorest towns in California? Environmental justice. So the people who make us the 5th largest economy in the world are the same people who are paying that cost that the EPA talks about. And so when I thought about this as a little boy who likes frogs, it motivated me to cross the line, so to speak.
How do celebrities like Justin Bieber and The Rock generate hundreds of millions of dollars? It's actually not what you think. They make a...
Crossing that line costs me. The chemical manufacturers set out to discredit me with personal attacks. They said, hey, he's biologist turned activist. Turned activist. A turn. You can't be a scientist and an activist. They tried to discredit me, but when they were interviewed by New Yorker magazine, they said it simply wasn't true. I must be crazy. I must be making it up. They said, and I quote, "I am troubled by a suggestion that we have ever tried to discredit anyone. Our focus has always been on communicating the science and setting the record straight. I am troubled at the suggestion that we've ever tried to discredit anyone." Where on earth would I have gotten the idea that they tried to discredit me? Well, it turns out they settled out of court a $105 million lawsuit, and all of their secret, like how we're going to get Tyrone notes, came out from their meetings. Their strategy became public. And look what the first goal under science was in their program. Where on earth did anybody get the idea that they would ever try to discredit anyone? I had to make a change. Academia, my advisor told me, don't be an advocate, let the science speak for itself. But I had to think about this, that we're being rewarded in the ivory tower, promoted for publishing things that the public doesn't have access to. I changed my mind about this philosophy because Syngenta, the company, says on their website, they assume no obligation to update forward-looking statements to reflect actual results. Pardon my language, but who says shit like that? But what concerned me more is that the EPA says that the ultimate decision of whether or not to ban atrazine is much bigger than science. It weighs in public opinion. And I thought the EPA is counting on my mom, the EPA is counting on you to help it make its decision, and I'm publishing my work in journals that you can't get in Barnes & Noble. We have to change the way we do things in the ivory tower. There's a philosophy by a great thinker that goes like this: those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. This guy said that, by the way, and I didn't grow up privileged. I don't know about you. All I know is that now I'm here. Now you are here. You are privileged, and you have a duty. And I've reasoned that we can change the past, but only if we act now, while it is still the future.
Okay, pretty powerful stuff here. That's an associate of one of our elders that she recommended me to him a while back. Does anyone have anything they would like to share? Please keep it kind of to a minute. We have a lot of videos, and I think, you know, it's really interesting because this kind of dovetails into the burning fields, that the poorest communities get the refineries, or like they put uranium mining on the reservation and then they were having all the birth defects. You know, it's like they get the worst land, and it's when you start noticing what's actually happening, it's a bit outrageous. Patricia, did you want to say something?
I would just suggest that the audience find Floyd Westerman's song. The title of it is "They Didn't Listen."
Yeah.
Floyd Westerman, look up the song "They Didn't Listen."
They didn't listen to the phenomenal song. Does anybody else want to make any comments? Otherwise, we'll go on to the next videos. So we're talking about, can you go ahead and cue the videos, Cynthia? We're talking about the fact that this stuff is affecting us, and that this isn't just to go into doomsday, but this is to start seeing, you know, all the conveniences we've ever had, are they worth this kind of thing? Scotchgard, you know, I've used Scotchgard before. I'm not perfect here, but it's like we're doing things without thinking. We're doing things, and is having all this stuff necessarily the best way to live? Will it require us to start, you know, not buying Scotch-guarded clothes, not buying plastic clothes, not, I was going to show another video about plastics, since we're getting so, we have a lot to do. I'm going to just explain to you maybe about a few of these, or maybe we can hopefully look at parts of them, but Which one's the next video, Cynthia? The elder, probably, right? Yeah, are you ready? The thing is, some of these things, when you wash your clothes, if they're made out of synthetics, any synthetics, this is not what Creator gave us. Creator didn't give us synthetic clothes. It puts microplastics, massive microplastics in the water system. So rethinking, wait a minute, we shouldn't be buying synthetics. None, 0, 0, 0. No polyester, no all this stuff. And how can we instead go back to indigenous practices of using natural substances? We have to rethink this stuff because it's massive and it's going into our body. So are you ready, Cynthia, for the next video? This is an elder in Africa. I can't
What would you say?
remember exactly where he
On
is.
the internet,
Okay.
with many followers, and I'm wondering if you could give any advice. What would you say?
Try to acquire good skills of survival, not depending on the outside world or on the civilized world, which make them handicapped. Then they don't think, they count with gadgets and forget the indigenous knowledge.
What's wrong with the civilized world?
They make you stupid. They control you. That knowledge doesn't work practically. Learn those skills to produce your own food and learn good medicine, which makes you healthy and young always.
I like your attitude.
If you don't listen, then
If I'm on my gadgets too much, I get.
So that you leave them, so that you make some ways of surviving.
Mpisi, you're full of zest. It's full of fire. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
79 years.
You're 79 years old.
12 February.
What's the secret? How do you stay 79 and still say?
Good food, organic food, always happy, no problems.
You grow your own food, right?
Corn, sorghum, millet, pumpkins, watermelons, peanuts, and beans. That's what we produce. And we feed those who live in cities.
Yeah.
Who can't work.
What do you think of city food?
A lot of chemicals. I don't like them.
Yeah. You're anti-chemicals.
I am a natural.
Out here, there's no chemicals.
No. I don't like you people to use chemicals. We use natural food.
Yeah.
Which heals. Can I tell you?
Yeah.
This is produced by chemicals.
It is. It's very true.
You are putting chemicals in your body. When you say it, you don't care what will happen. You are saying, I'm wearing a good shirt.
Yeah.
That's a problem. That you are practicing witchcraft on your body yourself with your mind. So people don't think about that.
Mpisi, but they tell me it's breathable and it's got air-wicking pockets and it's sweat-proof.
What about this?
I mean, that's just gazelle, right? That's just one gazelle skin. What are some other things you do to help the body, let's say?
I eat a lot of herbs.
Eat a lot of herbs?
Herbs.
Ah.
Yes. I know anti-aging herbs, whatever you need for bodies. That's my life. Remember, in our African region, we used nature. We depend on nature for food, for medicinal properties, for wild fruits. You can't survive without natural resources. We need them. That's why we are connected with nature.
I think that's really important for humans is to be in harmony with nature. We move to the cities, we distance ourselves, we get afraid of the dirt we walk on, all these different things, the weather, the animals, and then we become unhappy and we wonder why. But we're so disconnected from where we came from.
That's the problem with problem with cities, especially the city people. They don't know happiness.
Tell me more.
He was making a real good point here, which is that really, if we had clean food and clean water, and he's saying you're practicing witchcraft on yourself when you put chemicals on your body, like these clothes that have they have bad chemicals in them because it goes into the skin, it goes into the water system when you wash it. It is one of the biggest producers of chemicals that go into the water and microplastics. They slough off from these fabrics. Okay, so Do we have the next video coming up? Not the elder video, but the next one after that. Okay, this is the plastics, and it talks about okay. How's everybody doing? It's not totally pleasant, is it? But Patricia, come on with me.
Well, we all have heard about the quote, the American dream. So we know that the American dream is killing ourselves and we're killing the planet. And for years, I've said that we have a suicide homicide pact. When we harm ourselves, we harm others, and so on. So let me just say, because I'm speaking through the Indigenous lens, that I tell my audiences that we have the word for Well, first, let me say that we have Eholzen, which is holy thinking, right brain, left brain, whole brain thinking, conscience, and moral reasoning. To choose either win, lose, destructive, and death-producing decision for those outcomes and consequences, or we can choose I win and you win with our genius gift for meeting our basic needs for our collective survival, which is constructive and life affirming. So those are the only two intent. There's only two intentions that we're saying yes and no to. And so the word we have for okay, I'll start with Ehwelzen, holy thinking. I defined it in English, although Alila and Sahakes. Beautiful, powerful, miracle power of our sacred thinking, decision making. That's what I'm saying, that this holy thinking is clear and congruent thinking. And so when someone has twisted thinking, that means using our criminal mind, thinking for what it's not, using our thinking for what it's not for, we call it digiz. Digiz is twisted thinking. So look at our intentional. And then the African man, you know, he called it. He's diagnostic, upfront, blunt, straightforward. The intentional intent to destroy, he called witchcraft or sorcery. And our word for that is inzin, where someone is getting pleasure of inflicting pain on other people. And so let's rethink the American dream, because we're going to all be taken out of the body and off the planet if we're not focusing on nurturing, loving, caring, empathy, compassion for all life, and having reverence for ourself, and also reverence for nature and the environment. And Mari, I got a text and have a surprise visitor from driving through from all the way back east. So if I may excuse myself and hope that I've contributed to this point about what needed to be said here. Lots to say, but we need to look at the videos too also, and I'm sure there's many people that want to speak and contribute, okay?
Yes, thank you so much, Patricia. And we're going to be doing more classes with Patricia in the coming year and on, because she has so much to offer, and I'm hoping all of you will join us. So thank you so much, Patricia.
So when you hear these words and the vibration of it, and the translation and definition and illustration into the English language, I hope that I'm conveying and getting across the restoration of tribal languages, to have access to tribal remedies and all the things that this African man talked about, connection, our connection with nature, which we haven't lost. We have denied it and we have denied it arrogantly. So we've denied it with deception, the lies, and then the deviousness, the conning and scheming to win, to gang up power over and steal other people's land and resources and justify that. And then we have defiance. And I said we're arrogant in our defiance. So the closing statement I have is that I'm going to say this phrase, Nahasan Hima is our sacred Mother Earth. And then Jonah Shata is our, we could say, Father, Son. And then Yadeshil, which is all of creation, everything good, beautiful, and true. Hashjehowan. This is the divine feminine and masculine within us. No more domination, submission, a male dominate, female submission. The healthy helping teamwork. Within our divine feminine and masculine, life giver, nurturer, protector, provider, and with the power within to have power with us, others, that eliminates the need for power over, because we're seeing the corporations and the profit having power over. So thank you, ladies. Thank you, women. And I'm going to welcome this person who has come a very long ways. Didn't know if they could contact me or if I was even home. And I love you all. Thank you for your participation and your interest.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we're going to be going into, I know that we have a little bit on the Palestinian clothing. Are you queued up for that?
After a few weeks of research, I learned that each individual bundle of yarn had been washed in the seawater behind this man in order to preserve the colors. And that before they ended up on the beach here, the yarns, which were probably wool or linen or cotton, had been naturally dyed with plants and spices that were native to Palestine. Eventually, all these yarns would make their way to weavers all over Palestine, to be woven into clothing, rugs, and ultimately into the fabric of our heritage. This man was just one link in a long chain, an intimate creative network between Palestinians and their land. As a creative who works at the intersection of fashion, culture, and politics, I found this photograph both beautiful, because it's a part of my culture that I didn't know existed, and heartbreaking, because it's a part of my culture which no longer is common practice. Learning all of this, falling in love with this way of being and creating, I couldn't help but ask, why have these practices and indigenous practices in general been pushed to the edge of extinction? When Palestinians were forcibly expelled from their homes and their land in 1948, the Palestinians of Al-Majdal became refugees, their town was razed to the ground, and their textile traditions were threatened with extinction. We saw this happen in India, Indonesia, Mali, Guatemala, with the Quechua peoples of the Andes, with the First Nations. We see this happening now with indigenous peoples all over the world. Now, I know you might be asking, what's the big deal? It's just yarn and fabric, right? Well, it's a lot more than that. Al-Majdal is a microcosm of something a lot bigger at play, something that's continuing to unfold today, and it's inherently connected to the climate crisis. For generations, the West has invalidated and erased indigenous knowledge and ways of being. Knowledge which is deeply rooted in communication and active collaboration with Mother Nature. This type of relationship fostered a balance between us and the earth. But the refusal to listen to and center the indigenous perspective has pushed us way out of balance. And it turns out that the world depends on this indigenous knowledge to protect a planet on the brink of disaster. For example, traditional Palestinian embroidery is typically done in what we call tatriz circles, in which embroiderers work together in a circle, often storytelling and singing, and each individual stitch is done by hand. This means that some garments can take up to 6 months to complete, and the garments often stay in our closets for decades, if not generations, passing from mother to daughter. Now, with a world that now experiences 52 seasons a year, this can be pretty hard to wrap your head around. And when I say 52 seasons, I'm referring to the micro collections that brands release every single week. That's a pretty radical departure from the world that our grandparents or even our parents knew, in which we had clothes for hot weather and clothes for cold weather. Now, with brands turning out collections every week, in combination with the throwaway culture that we've developed, it's estimated that we throw away 92 million tons of clothing every year. And that's a number that's expected to keep rising in the coming years. Now, most of that clothing waste contains polyester, the most commonly used fabric in the fashion industry today. So polyester is made from oil, which means that it's essentially plastic in the form of fabric. And it takes hundreds of years for it to decompose. Now, if any of these facts are hard for you to wrap your head around or to process, it could be because we have the privilege to not have to process these facts. The global north ships and dumps most of this waste into countries throughout Africa and Asia, leaving the global south to deal with the problems created by the global north. Now, the green movement has started taking up practices to challenge and change this reality. Practices which, by the way, have been native to Black, Indigenous, and people of colors for centuries. The irony is that as these countries throughout Europe and America replicate these exact practices, it is Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are affected by and devastated by the impacts of climate change the most. The fight for our survival as a species has been declared, and endeavors to save the planet are finally getting more and more attention. But in order for us to make real progress, we need to first acknowledge the colonial power structures which shaped and continue to shape the world that we're in today. And we need to center Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the conversation. Now, reimagining the future doesn't stop at our relationship with the environment, but we need to extend it to our relationship with people, specifically the people who make our clothes. So last year, I designed the dress, which included a belt featuring traditional Palestinian tatriz, or embroidery. The belts were embroidered here in a women's cooperative in Palestine. And there were 5 different designs, 1 embroiderer assigned to each design. And because each embroiderer had her own work pace based on her specific work-life balance, then each design was ready and shipped out to customers at different times. So if you ordered the dress in red, then you were amongst the last people to receive your dress. And that's because while working on the belts, the embroiderer suddenly and unexpectedly lost her daughter, who was hit and killed by a truck. Do you see this woman differently now? She is no longer an artisan or a producer, but she is a mother, a wife, and a daughter who has now lost her own daughter. So where was the space for that reality in the conversation between the customer and the brand? Where was the space for that reality in the conversation when I started getting emails from customers asking and sometimes demanding to know why it was taking so long to receive their dresses? In these moments, I realized how much we've dehumanized clothing, how much we've decentered people in the production process of the clothes that we wear. This was a pivotal moment for me, and it established my goal of challenging and restructuring the standard consumer-producer relationship, which has been set by corporations who would rather have you know next to nothing about the people who make our clothes. So now I want to ask you, do you know who cut and sewed the clothes that you're wearing right now? Do you know who harvested the plants to make the fabric that you're wearing right now? Do you know whether you're wearing natural or synthetic fabrics? None of those questions are meant to make you feel bad. I also don't know the answers to a lot of these questions. When shopping ethically is in and of itself a privilege, it is the system, the brands, the legislation, and the policies which should take the responsibility of providing these answers for us. But we need to put pressure on them by asking the questions. So we can start by asking, why are the lives of textile artists hidden and unknown by us, the wearers of the clothes that they make? Why aren't we involved in the production process of the clothes which we wear on our bodies, as physical extensions of our beings, as means of expressing who we are and where we come from and who we want to be that day? Because if we knew too much about those people, then we might want to do something about the ways that they're being treated. And then companies would have a really hard time unevenly distributing their revenue.
It's funny because we're living in such a fast-paced way that we're not able to even understand the impact of what we're doing. We're devoid from the process. So instead of making our own paint from earth or different things, we're just buying things. And so we have no understanding of what is happening with the companies that are making it. And that's part of Indigenous ways, is to be in relationship with the whole process, so you don't lose control, not control, but you don't lose your connection with what's actually happening. Because would you buy all that latex paint or whatever if you knew it was toxifying everything? But if you have no understanding of what the problems are that are being created through the creation of what you're buying, it kind of separates us. So does anybody have any comments at this point? We're going to start going into food in a second and creating the food forest. Cynthia, you can queue up those videos. But I think she makes some excellent points here, and excellent points about that we used to use these natural fibers, but now that got completely obliterated. And now it's just kind of for the wealthy to buy a few things that are maybe embroidered or something. And also she goes on to also say something to the effect of that these women don't want to be seen as textile employees, like just people sewing things. They're people putting their heart and soul and energetic into this. And that's what Indigenous people create their own fabrics, and so when you wear something, it's almost a ceremony itself. It's that much beauty, that much, versus just grabbing a bunch of t-shirts, grabbing a bunch of this and that doesn't mean anything to us, and going along in that way, that fast process versus that slow process. Cynthia, let's run the next video. We're going to go into food and foresting. This video was basically saying that the Indigenous people monitor the environment, and in their monitoring of the environment, they recognize climate changes faster, and they've proven that they can tell when rain's coming or different things just by looking at the atmosphere, whereas scientists can't do it. And so now scientists are getting together with Indigenous people, and they're putting their hearts and minds together to start bringing about a new way. And that Indigenous folks have stewarded the land this long without incident. So how can we not put them at the forefront of this knowledge of how we should do it, All right.
Waimata Food Commons in Ōtautahi Christchurch is a beautiful example of community food resilience. This is a story about seeing the potential of underutilised public spaces and how they can be transformed into sources of healthy food and community connection.
There's a growing acceptance that we utilise a lot of rural land in really abhorrent ways to produce our food. And that doesn't give us a lot of input into how we feed ourselves. We're relying on a system that may not have our best interests at heart. And so food sovereignty speaks to our ability as communities to create systems to feed and nourish ourselves in ways that are independent of that system. that do have our own and collective well-being right at the front of all the energy that goes into that. Woolston's a community in the eastern part of Otatahi Christchurch. There's a belt of low socioeconomic communities that line the eastern side of the city and probably have been hardest hit by the continual shocks that have happened through the last 12 years. Earthquakes, a lot of them for many years following, and then we've had floods, we've had fires, we've had terror attacks in the city, and then obviously most recently we've had our share of the COVID experience. And so we felt it was important to start developing long-term solutions to some of these quite systemic issues. About 5 years ago, myself and some of the community that live in and around Radley Park, which is 6 hectares of land, petitioned the council to start developing a food system in here. We got permission to plant 30 trees, so we planted 65. That's now expanded to between 120 to 140, most of which are contained within 2 to 3 food forest systems. And we've got about 140 heritage fruit trees.
It's been all the white butterflies this year.
Even before we probably dug the first hole for the first tree, we had quite an in-depth discussion about the philosophy that sits behind what we're trying to do here. We decided to become a food commons, and that was something that was personally really important to me. Public parks that are dotted around our cities all over the world are commons. They are owned by the community collectively and managed by a council or a state body to look after it in a certain way that they see fit. And what we've tried to do here is hold a vision for what we can do in relationship with this land that is a lot more nourishing, not only for the land itself, but for our community. It's a step away from, I guess, the transactional relationship that dominates the way that we act in the world. But we don't hold any sense of ownership over the food that is produced. So by doing that, it allows us to kind of step away and allow people who need access to food to source that food without any shame or any other negative emotional attachments that could be felt alongside that. But still holding a level of hope and optimism that at some point they'll feel comfortable to start participating at a much deeper level, especially a practice of kaitiakitanga for the living systems that we're creating in the park here. I think it was about 18 months ago, talking to friends who are organic market gardeners that sell their goods in the city. They made me aware of an opportunity to get hold of food that wasn't being sold at their farmers markets and that could be redistributed elsewhere. So we built a pātaka kai. So a pātaka kai within a traditional Māori pā is the building that stores food. Every Sunday we head down to the farmers market once it's finished and collect the food that they can't resell over the next couple of days. So rather than it going to compost, we collect it and we put it on the pātaka kai, and community can come down and help themselves to whatever they need to nourish themselves. We only put fresh organic food on the pātaka kai. There's an ebb and flow in terms of what we have access to. In autumn, the pātaka kai is not big enough. You know, we have bins of food sitting on the ground that are full of organic tomatoes and cucumbers and courgettes. But we do notice in winter that that abundance isn't there. And it's important for people to acknowledge the seasonal aspect of food. I guess that drives us to look at ways that we can increase our food production so that we can have a little bit more resilience and depth behind the food that we have access to.
Oh, she likes lettuce.
One of the reasons we love this project is that it's an idea that can be replicated in public parks all over the world.
What about some of these? Any of these pretty?
In addition to the benefits for land and community, it can also be a huge cost saving for local councils.
To sell them?
By petitioning the council to stop spraying herbicides and reducing the area that needs to be mowed, Romarta Food Commons saves the council around $10,000 a year. Ōtautahi Christchurch alone has over 800 parks. Imagine the benefits if more of these spaces were placed back into the hands of communities.
In that video, they were talking about how we have access to all these parks all over the world, or all over the United States, different places, that all parks are common owned. So they're owned in the commons. And so they petitioned the parks to take a certain amount of space and put in community gardens so people that didn't have food could access food. And that they take all the extra farmers market food and put it in a storage place so people can go get it and just take what they want. And they garden also at the same time. And so folks that don't have food can come over and get food. And they're hoping that people will contribute that take food if possible, but they're not being demanded to. And that they can start gardening and helping out too. So it creates this community, but also if we have food accessible to everyone, then it creates more security. It creates also less buying of food all around the world. And so it doesn't import and export as much. It doesn't require as much pollution from shipping things all over the place. It brings our life more into where we can sustain ourselves in the community that we're living. So does anybody have anything they want to add along those lines? Okay, Cynthia, why don't you cue up the next video, because we're really looking at something we can do. We could actually, band together, and we're going to have meetings in the future where we talk about creating projects and things where maybe we obtain land to get community land, and how can we start helping everybody else convert to a more sustainable way by starting projects ourselves, but doing what I think Steve was talking about, which is paying very much attention to what are we going to do before we do it so we don't create a further problem, which permaculture addresses. Instead of planting a non-Indigenous species and planting something that's going to be taking over, that's invasive, how do we plant things that are in harmony with the ecosystem the way it wants to be in that region, and understanding the ecosystem?
As a Native American, Alfred Melbourne is pushing the food sovereignty movement.
Growing food in a traditional and culturally appropriate way that's regenerative and sustainable, growing with Mother Nature and not against it.
Melbourne founded Three Sisters Gardens in 2018 to teach at-risk youth how to grow, harvest, and distribute organic vegetables. The goal: end hunger.
Three Sisters Gardens, located right here in West Sacramento, from the railroad tracks to the river, is designated a food desert. Our goal is to give away from 40 up to 60% of our food here locally, definitely trying to work with the Native and Indigenous communities.
Nationally, 1 in 5 Native Americans face hunger. That's more than 3 times the rate of white people.
We're not just trying to give food away, we're also trying to teach folks how to grow their own food so that they can do for themselves.
When you're talking about food sovereignty, I would say that this is specifically tied to, for example, gardening.
As a Native American educator, Dr. Rose Souza War Soldier says food sovereignty is also about culture restoration for Indigenous people.
The idea of food sovereignty, really is the idea of having a land-based return to cultural practices and cultural revival. And so this is deeply tied to land, which means that it's deeply tied to culture.
All we have to do is remember what's innate and in our DNA. And so we have to use our voice to continue to advocate for other Native and Indigenous people so that we can get back to doing for ourselves as we did in the past.
Okay. Go ahead and queue up the next one, but I wanted to kind of very briefly chat about that, because what they were talking about in this is when you do get back into planting and taking care of yourself in that way, when you do get back to those things, what happens? It creates community. It creates people working together. It creates a place where you can congregate to do dances and songs and teach stories to the young people. It combines, it allows the elders and the youth and the adults to get together and start creating community and spaces where everyone is embraced and everyone is cared for again. Everyone is included. That's what, instead of having this world where everybody's kind of a throwaway commodity, like you go to a job and then they just get rid of you, they get to know you, they get to love you. Everybody's got their specialty. Everybody's got a gift, an amazing gift they can give each other. That is indigenous ways. In fact, that is permaculture. Permaculture actually came from indigenous practices, but it was what people developed that were, people had been so disassociated with the land and the practices that permaculture was developed as something to be an answer for that. But indigenous people have done it the whole time, but permaculture became something that people could teach, so they could start reteaching indigenous ways. Permaculture is observing nature's laws. Like one of the tenets for permaculture is water runs downhill. What that means is, because water naturally runs downhill, you work with the capabilities of water to do what it naturally does, as you work with the earth the way it naturally behaves, as you work with yourself the way you naturally behave. Like you naturally get gray hair, possibly when you get older. You naturally get these things, and to embrace the naturalness of what is happening and to go along with that, rather than maybe get Botox or all these things that are become poison within you, that create problems within you. When you start embracing the way the earth goes, the way the nature does its cycles, then you get into harmony with what has been created by nature itself. And when you do that, then you are not usually one to think to go out of harmony to get amass money or do this thing. Instead, we are helping each other. We're all coming together with our genius gifts, our healthy, helping spirit with each other, rather than making some people down and some people up. Some people reap the great rewards of all the stuff, and then the other people on the bottom are having the toxic environments that we take our stuff and we put it in their environment, and they become toxic. Oh, wait a minute, we forgot that toxic environment spreads everywhere, and now we're affected. Oops. So it can't be just thinking one person's going to do our dirty work, like be a slave, and we're going to reap the benefit. This is making our hearts close. This is hurting us. This is getting us to do things in our mind that are counter to life. This is getting us to be racist. This is getting us to try to get the benefits just for ourselves. This is not actually possible. It's actually suicidal pact, like Patricia said. Does anybody have anything to add to this? Okay. I want to really thank everybody for being patient, because some of our elders somehow did not we're not able to show, and we're still waiting for one to come in, and I'm not sure that will be happening at this point. I don't know what exactly happened on the reservation to her, but and we had 2 others call in with emergencies, so I do want to remind everybody that. And I do want to say we really thank you with flowing with the way things have gone today. Okay, Cynthia, can we start the video?
You know, I think everybody knows that deforestation has gripped the whole planet. It's estimated that we lose about 10 billion trees a year, and that means 19 million acres of forest go with them. 10% of all the wilderness areas lost the last 15 years. And I think everybody knows too, instinctually, that forests are fundamental for stabilizing life on Earth. They're just like coral reefs. They're kind of disproportionately important as safe places. 80% of the world's plants and animals live in forests. 3/4 of all our fresh water comes from forests. And the loss of forests causes the permanent, irrevocable loss of topsoils. And the loss of forests destabilizes climates. When trees die, they take everything with them. All the other plants that grow with them. All the other plants that grow in their shade. The vines that grow on them, the moths that are eating all the leaves, the shiny blue beetle in the nest of moths, everything goes. Deforestation acts like a gigantic whirlpool. I've seen it. It's like a cyclone taking everything permanently. You know, deforestation is worldwide, but I don't think there's very many places that have suffered a degree of deforestation than has my home in the Hawaiian Islands.
Can we go on to the next video? While we're doing that, I just want to say there is one thing. We are, you know, we can achieve a lot by planting trees. And at the same time, the old growth trees were very important to the ecosystem, and they have been harvested in a way that's not positive, really. So in forestation, though, if this one child, I don't know if that's the next video or not. He is doing tree planting of 1 million trees per country. And if we can do things like that, we can sequester enough carbon. So how can we start doing things around this? We can petition our councils for to take our parkland and put a portion of that to these food cooperatives. We can start growing in our backyard. We can start growing in our front yard vegetables instead of keeping lawns and things like that. And then when you put this food in your front yard, what'll happen is you can share with your neighbors. One of the persons that was going to come in for some reason that did not was going to speak on that, and I don't know why so many people have had some issues today getting here, but he has a garden out in front of his house, and I take lemons over there all the time. Then I took some rosemary, and then he allows people to go ahead and take whatever they want in the front yard. He has probably a garden in the back also. But as we convert and start showing our neighbors that we are doing this, what happens is we start trading, we start gifting each other different foods and different things. we elect to stop wearing polyester and all that. We start not using plastics. We start slowing down. We start having community again. We're not so worried about being on our cell phones 24 hours. We start connecting with each other. This is going back to indigenous life. It's going back to understanding the cycles and being in harmony with them. It's going back to understanding process, being in process. So making your own paint, making your own textiles, making your own, and yes, it takes longer, but it's a creative endeavor. And remember how much fun it used to be to create things when you got younger? I mean, you were younger, I'm sorry. How amazing that was to create, not just buy toys where it's kind of like, here it is, now play with it, now throw it down the down the sewer or whatever. But instead you make your own things. You're not going to throw those into the sewer. You're not going to be frustrated with those things. And then the father and the mother get together and they teach the child how to do that and think of the bonding rather than here's a toy. These are the kinds of things that bring back connection. So please, Cynthia, let's go to the next.
Saya Sadiman dan umur 69 tahun. Dan usaha saya menggarap lahan hutan, ingin menghijaukan hutan bisa lebat, dan saya tanami beringin, bulu ipe, dan banyak bermanfaat untuk masyarakat sini. Awal-awal itu Mas, gunung itu udah kebakaran Mas, terus airnya mati, terus saya mempunyai greget itu karena tidak saya tanam beringin. Daerah ini daerah gersang itu loh Mas.
Kenapa beringin?
Kalau beringin itu Mas, banyak mengandung air. Beringin, ipe, bulu itu banyak mengandung air itu loh. Yang pertama kali kemarin itu tinggal 2 itu, kemarin itu tinggal 2. Ingin membesarkan air terutama. Terus kedua, orang hidup membutuhkan udara bersih Mas. Benar air ya itu. Terus membutuhkan orang hidup membutuhkan udara bersih untuk paru-paru dunia. Dan ketiganya untuk teranggulangan bencana alam. Itu akarnya sangat panjang. Saya disindir-sindir kalau memikul ringin itu tidak, masyarakat tidak nyaman gitu, merasakan tidak nyaman gitu, karena sistemnya jiwanya masih anisme, soalnya tempatnya tetek melek itu loh masih gitu loh.
Dianggap orang gila, ini punya kambing ditukerin bibit ringin, itu kan dianggap masyarakat orang gila. Tapi hasilnya sekarang mendapatkan air buat mencukupi berapa desa.
Mudah-mudahan masyarakat sini bisa subur, makmur, dan hidup bahagia dunia dan akhirat, dan jangan sekali-kali membakar hutan.
Yeah, what they've found is, oh, that's wonderful. Wait a minute, one second. What they found is if you start planting trees that are the appropriate trees, they will actually bring more water into the land, and that's what happened. Also, one of the people that was going to come and hasn't come either um, does work with beavers, and when in the United States they killed the majority of the beavers, it started making all the land arid, because what beavers do is by creating dams, it actually makes all the area get green around the water sources, and then the water sources get larger. So it's really, Mother Nature really does know what it's doing. It's when man is taking all the beavers and killing them, or taking out some of the plants that we grow. And right now, as an example, we're only farming rice and wheat and different things, but there were a lot of other crops. The diversity itself is what creates the balance. It is actually Mother Nature that knows the right way to do it. So when man and woman decide, oh no, we're going to only focus on rice and wheat and just a few different crops, then it upsets the balance naturally. So we need to allow Mother Nature to regenerate itself. So let's go ahead and watch this video.
Say you left the field like this completely alone.
Yes, if the trees, which is happening anyway, if you look at the edge of that woodland it's stepping in. And we have, already regeneration here of willow. But this is grazed, that my ponies come in here, so it doesn't get a chance. But I could allow this to completely close in. But slowly, this field would become a woodland. Absolutely, that biodiversity would come in here, but not if it's grazed.
No. But like, what time scale would that take? Have you an idea based on other places?
For this?
Like, leave a field like this alone? Of course you have deer.
I'd say 10 years.
10 years?
I'd say 10 years. But you can see the deer paths.
And even with the deer pressure here?
Yeah, I think it could still happen that eventually, like this has made it despite the deer pressure and cattle and horses. But if you did fence it off completely, it would obviously come back. Probably more species would come in. If you left it just for the deer, it would be mostly, I'd say, willow, with some alder and maybe birch. I discovered the deer don't really bother with them. Hazel is regenerating. Actually, hazel would come in here, and hazel's not affected as much by deer.
They would browse it, but it's very
resilient.
Resilient.
And it puts out so much branches and leaf, that it can handle it. So, I mean, the other tree that would come in is a hawthorn, and I am getting hawthorn regeneration. They're also not affected by deer, and possibly holly. And this again is an example of the woodland stepping into the field. These are not planted. And they've survived, browsing again. And you see the bramble following, using the structure of the trees to also piggyback and come in. The bramble is excellent for wildlife. It's fruit, it's cover.
Has the bramble an important function in succession and natural regeneration?
It does have an important part to play. Nature never wants to leave the ground bare, to protect the soil.
But would natural regeneration come through that easily?
Well, if left alone, it would eventually, yeah, because with the bramble for protection, the deer never went near it. The birch can get up through it. The hawthorn can also come up through it. The willow will get up through it. As they create canopy, the bramble will move to where there's more light, and then the area is ready for oak, and the hawthorn will, protect the oak in the same way, and eventually the oak will get up. And the pioneers have done their job.
Does anybody want to speak about anything that they're feeling or seeing in any of these videos? And also, like I was saying before, kind of getting together to maybe start some projects or combine what you're seeing with, getting together with other groups that are doing things would be very positive for all of us. Maham, would you like to come on board?
So I have actually been working for almost a year and a half. Actually, I materialized what I was manifesting for the past year. I started um, spring of last year in April at a community close to my guru. He has a community. It was more of a hill where it had the you call it more like a sewer system, but it just hill itself. It was probably about, I say maybe about 50 feet wide and 30 feet long. No, 50 feet long and 30 feet wide. And it was just a lot of weeds and just vegetation was growing every by by June the city would come and just spray and try to kill all the weeds, and it would just destroy everything that was just living there, and it was just really bad because it would seep into the drainage, and you don't know where the water would go. So um last year in April, there were weeds about taller than me. I'm like 6'2", so it was probably about 7 feet tall. So I spent a full day, and I mean, I literally hurt my back from doing it because it was a lot of physical movement that I've never done for a long while. So I pulled all the weeds out, and luckily because it was raining, and then I start weeding, pulling all the weeds out. And I remember this was like maybe back in 2017. I was in a different location, I was helping another friend of mine had like a 1 acre land. Now it's turned to a luscious garden because they have so much food and everything. But I helped them during the time when I was pulling all the weeds out back then. I remember, I'm very connected to the nature, and I heard this voice saying to me that every time you pull a weed out and you do something for the earth, we're gonna clean the karma that you had, some bad karma. So this kind of was in my head for a long time, and I do have a green thumb, so I've been doing well. Just getting back to that conversation, so I've been since of April of last year until I think it was probably about 2.5 months ago. All the group, all the disciples of my guru, we all got together. I paid for everything. I paid for the mulch. I paid for the weed mats. I paid for the nails, and we just made it happen. And we planted 2 avocado trees. There's geranium plants growing. So there's just like, and there's like African plants. And it was so amazing because during the time that I spent for a whole year working on that hill, I mean, it was amazing. Is that I started getting to know the community. All the neighbors would come in, and I had this one guy. He was so awesome. He would come had his little dog and Jingo, and they would come and hand me a bottle of water. It was so sweet. I get to know everybody, and everybody got to know me. And there was one person in particular was a neighbor of my guru, and he was very sarcastic, and he was just trying to like find a fit with me, like why I'm spending all my weekends and after work coming work. And he's just in his mind, he couldn't really understand why I was doing this, and I was just like, in return, I was just constantly smiling at him, and I tell him, thank you, I appreciate it, even though he was just being so sarcastic and so, he was trying to find a way to get me angry, but in a way, I found the love because I knew there was something within him that, if I show love, and if I respond to him with love, then somehow in his mind, when he's back in his house, I think he's gonna think of himself, oh, you know something with him will change. And eventually it did, because when we spent almost a full day, we had mulch come in. It was more than enough. We filled up mulch almost about 3 to 4 inches, and we had extra. And it was just so beautiful, the whole hill was just, oh, magnificent. It was natural brown, and it just fit in perfectly. And he came in, and he was just like, I mean, literally his mouth was like, and he was like, wow, all this for that? I'm like, yeah.
It's
And then
funny,
we had and then we
Mama.
had neighbors across the way, and they said that because they always like to spend time outside their backyard and play with their kids, and they said, we are just so pleased just to sit in our backyard and just look at this view with these beautiful trees, as we just.
So as we do this kind of work, it will naturally rub off on other people because they'll see the heart of our love coming through like you're talking about, and at the same
Yeah.
time they'll start seeing the ramifications of it. So as we be that expression on the planet, we'll also feel more compassion for people because, as you're saying, you know, it didn't bother you because you knew what you were really doing, but then he saw it, and then it starts catching on like this beautiful wave.
Yeah, and there's avocados trees, and we
Yeah, and
have
then
two
there's
avocados,
trees.
and eventually, let's say about 10 years, maybe 5 years, they're gonna be fruiting, and they're gonna be enjoying eating those avocados, because it's gonna be
Absolutely.
free. So
Yeah.
there's just so much to it.
I do want to say one thing though about the word weeds. I want to I'll get us to think about that word because there are actually plants, and we just don't know what those plants are. And we kind of lump that into this idea of invasiveness versus a lot of those plants are food, like dandelions, like all sorts of things that grow in the sidewalk. And sometimes to leave them would be a food source if the going gets rough. And to make um, a relationship with those quote weeds and learn who they really are and what they really do. So I would like to go to Christopher. What?
And just a reminder, we're at 2:28.
Yes, we're at 2:28, so we're going to be going a little bit, and I'm sorry for this. It's the whole day has been a totally different day with people having medical issues, etc. We've had so many people have a problem, but we are doing what it takes, which is ad-libbing and being available for life as it comes. So I would like to give Christopher the some space to speak.
Quick question. How much time have we got since there's time pressure?
Well, I think we're going to do 30 more minutes
Okay.
because we have another video, but we also, and I hope anybody can stay longer, and I'm so sorry about that. We have a ceremony out, so I would say we have some more video too, but about 15 minutes. But why don't you
Yep, I'll go from there.
share something?
Just answering part of what you were just talking about, one of the plants that I use as an example, if you get dock plants, their roots are very deep. What they do in nature, they take the minerals from deep in the soil and bring it to the surface. And this is one of the functions of deep-rooted plants like dandelion. Nature brings plants in as she needs them and helps balance the soil. Now, what I find, and we're looking at, is nature works in community, from the small plants, the medium plants, the big trees. And you can take this with whatever grain of salt you want. I've been able to talk to the earth since I was a child, and what she's shown me recently is how in her and all plants work in community. There is nothing as separate from anything else. And she's showing me this is what we need to do as humans. Everything serves a place, it serves a role. Nothing is outside this cycle. And she showed me that this is the way forward that we're coming into, well, not come in, we're doing now. And as she said, we have no time. It's now learning to work in community, which is heart-centered, heart-based. That's learning to step out of the egoic mind into awareness, into presence, and listening from that place. Judgment and perception of what we think we know is brain activity. When we step from brain to awareness, and it's the same awareness when we think, there's an awareness that's aware of the thought. We drop the thought, stay with the awareness, and bring this into nature. Through this awareness and presence, she can communicate, whether we see it visually, emotionally, kinesthetically, doesn't matter. However that communication happens is the guidance we receive. It's like when we go to do something, we naturally know whether to do this or not. So when we're working with nature, you can listen through that. For me, she gives me images, communication. It's like whole impression in one go. It's not like words like we talk in humans. You go to nature. That sense of peace and tranquility that most of us feel is the place that we start listening and we hear her guidance. Now, I'm working with people, we're teaching people to do this through Indigenous teachings and through personal experience. And to me, you can communicate anywhere by having that open mind, in presence, and awareness. That's a short intro. I'm almost wanted to say, do you have any questions? Because I could go into what she's communicating, how she's showing it, and how the people I'm working with are bringing the Indigenous teachings in through this as well, because they naturally have that connection with Mother Earth. They wonder why we in the Western cultures don't hear her like they do. Because they've been invalidated, they've tended to keep the teaching. So we're looking at working with people and we're bringing those teachings through. Talking stick in the middle.
I love what you're saying. I mean, that is so right on. Really, I'm actually going to be doing some workshops coming up, bringing in realized teachers with Indigenous, and I would love to actually stay in touch with you and work with you on all this, because the real truth is, you know, we actually used to be able to even feel each other and know when each other is going to call us, or all sorts of things, or get messages from each other, or know about what's happening. And some of the Indigenous have said the reason they can still do that is because they have nothing to hide from each other. That there's this quality, instead of getting into cell phones, it's almost like one of our elders says a lot of times when I'm talking to her, you know, we've developed cell phones for something we can do naturally. So we've almost taken it and made it into kind of replacing what we could do naturally. Because if you already knew what was happening, or you could communicate that way, which you really can, if you develop qualities, then why are we replacing it with these things and then getting addicted to it and then having to update our cell phones constantly, as an example? That's just an example of that kind of thing. But also, if we get rid of our knowing to the point where we can't say yes and no in a congruent manner, then we're going along with decisions that are not life affirming, that are suicidal in some ways, and we're allowing those people to lead us instead of really have that connection with source, where we don't need that as much, or where we can talk to each other and kind of keep each other on the straight and narrow in a good way. And that sensitivity with nature, what you're saying is so right on. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. Part of this is like when I take people into nature, what I get them to do is listen. You know, if we feel our own breath, feel that natural rhythm, and I get them to feel, once we get used to that first rhythm of breath, feel if there's a deeper rhythm our body is called to breathe at, which there is. So we drop into that second rhythm and feel our nature in that. We breathe with that, and then I get them to reach out from there, feel the trees around them, and feel the trees' rhythm. And then we match rhythm with them, because once we've got that matched rhythm, which is essentially the frequency of consciousness, this communication happens.
Yes.
It's like we're equal, and in that equal place, communication happens. Simple exercise, feel the breath, drop through the second rhythm of the breath, that deeper rhythm, feel the rhythm of the trees from there. And then as we match that rhythm, communication takes place. We can do this with people, we can do it with trees, we can do it with anything, including the earth. She has her rhythm. We match the rhythms. Once you breathe in rhythm, you can then walk in rhythm. You know, we walk in the heartbeat of Mother Earth. This is a simple way of doing it. I find it usually only takes a few minutes to tap people in.
Yeah, and that changes
communication is, sorry, back to you.
And that changes your being state and the way you pay attention.
Does.
Instead of making it an airy-fairy kind of idea, like, oh, let's, instead to actually embody that energetically.
Yeah. When you're in line with her, I find the life energy inside and the vitality uplift. When we're going against the natural direction, we feel a constriction of both our breathing and the energy. Now, once again, you can take this with whatever grain of salt you want. I find when we walk in harmony with the trees, the tree energy comes in. And when we're out of harmony, or people aren't listening to the trees, I watch people walk along forest paths, and the tree energy opens up, lets the people through, and then comes back in behind them. So people walk through the forest, but not in the forest. When you walk in her, her energy comes in to meet us. We walk in her energy, in her presence, by acknowledging her, listening to her, greeting her, welcoming, thanking her. But once again, not from our concepts, but from the way she recognizes, which is in breath and time with her. When we drive, there's a speed that we drive at, and it changes from place to place, where we feel the energy come in the car. We feel the presence of the trees and the environment around us. We drive faster than that, it's like we're getting ahead of it, and it hasn't got time to come in. If we go too slow, it's like she's trying to pull us forward. There's an ideal speed that we walk at, that we drive at, that we move at, that keeps us in touch, and that changes from place to place. But it's learning to do this. Yes. Once again, I've done this with a variety of people. People find they can do it and changes their driving habits. Yeah. And the surprise thing with that, I find when we drive in sync with her, she shows me when to drive faster, when to drive slower. And she's helped me avoid accidents and other things by telling me to slow down before I come. Well, recently we struck somebody driving on the wrong side of the road. But because I'd slowed down, I was able to take a phase of action and the passing was peaceful. Once again, that's by listening to her.
Yes. I think what I'm hearing you say is that in being present, in noticing our surroundings, in noticing our breath, in noticing our internal cycles, in noticing the feelings we're having in our body, then we open up to a different kind of relationship with everything because we're noticing, we're being present, we're taking a different space. And so we're allowing that to inform us. Cynthia, why don't you cue up the last video? And I think you're going to really appreciate this one because there's some real insight in this video. Strangely enough, this particular woman was not born into a regular community. She was born into something different, and she expresses. She talks about that, and they didn't use money in her community, and it's in Ireland. So this is a real eye-opener on what can be created. So.
We only have the direction that we have, and this is it. All of it. We have to be able to stay with the trouble. Stay with it. Like, it's really hard and it's really complicated and complex, what we're living in, the world, and to be human. That we have the capacity to hold so many things in ourselves at the same time, like the amazing beauty of a flower and the knowledge that cities are created out of destroyed mountains and the sound of a bubbling brook. I hope that the future is something beyond my capacity to imagine it. Yeah, I come from Ireland, or I was born in Ireland, in a Camp Hill community, which is anthroposophically inspired community where, or like a village, we called it a village actually, where families live together with people with special needs. And it's quite self-sufficient. So we had a biodynamic farm and biodynamic garden, and there was a weavery and a store, and it was an incredibly protected environment. It was kind of similar to this, like small paths and trees, and it was right by the sea. So I grew up in a little oasis in Ireland, I would say. My parents and everyone else who worked there worked voluntarily. There was no wages, and there was no exchange of money at all. Like, we had a store, and that store brought in bulk organic produce, and then we went and like took a scoopful of nuts or a scoopful of rice and weighed it and then wrote down the price in a book. So each household had a page in a book in the store where you just wrote down what you'd taken. And each year, each household would make an assessment of approximately how much finances they would need, but there was no actual money. That there would be a question of market connected to food is completely, it was never part of my childhood, and it's not part of the Camp Hill model, and that I feel like is sound. Like, it really works, and it has to be like that. Like, separating food from the market, I think, is definitely a lesson that I want to see.
From the economic market.
From the economic market, yeah. That you should put pressure on the people who are maintaining the land and providing food and providing habitat, and also force them to know about and to engage in the economic market and competition. I think is crazy. And it puts crazy pressure on the environment. That you're forcing people to force environment into shapes that it doesn't want to take, and that no farmer wants to put it in, I don't think either, or gardener. So that's one thing. And the other thing, which I feel is super important, and I don't have such a clear idea of how that would happen, but is working together with people with special needs. Like, I have also realized that to grow up side by side with people who have a completely different way of seeing reality, communicating, like maybe without speech, ability physically to walk or not to walk, and without anyone telling me that they were less or different or not normal, has also been an unbelievable gift. There are energies and beings that are all around us all the time. That was an alive idea in the community that I grew up in. That spaces were, like, for me it was so alive. It's also actually quite alive in Irish culture. That there are beings that are connected to certain trees and certain spaces. To have that as such a uncriticized reality is very nice. It very quickly changes relationship to the environment that you're in. It gives an immense freedom, I think, when you accept or live in the reality that everything is alive and everything is connected. And that's also including the cosmos. Like, it's very expansive way of seeing. I feel an enormous freedom in that. When I'm feeling attacked by different bugs or things, then I'm like, I'm allowed to have that feeling of being attacked. Like, I'm also participating in this. Me and all of my anxieties or stresses. And we are in a relationship. If I allow those things to be, then suddenly I see, like, I'm released from that perspective of like tight and controlling. And then I can lift out and see us all in a more or less harmonious dance. Förädlad is the name of the garden project, and it's a CSA Ekonomisk Förening. It's another one of those Swedish things that I really can't translate. And that concept and the name came out of me and the person who started this project. We both wanted to slow it down. Like, we wanted to be able to enjoy all the things that are wonderful about gardening without getting too caught up in the things that can go wrong or the pressure of finances. And I've, for a long time, have been förädling, and förädlad is a really nice Swedish word that is also not translatable into English. It's a transformation, so you could say it's food processing, but that doesn't say at all the same thing that förädlad does, because förädlad is also like making something more than it was, like, yeah.
Enhancing?
Enhancing, exactly, which is not a word that you would use in the same context in English. So it's a much nicer word. So there was no way that we could have any other name. But I've been doing a lot of fermenting, which is a form of förädling, like food processing. Lacto-fermenting vegetables, which was also something which I started as soon as I started gardening, because to take care of the big harvest that happens in August and September. Like if you don't know where you're going to sell it, or also to be able to have food during the whole year. So I got interested in that, and then we integrated it into the project. So everything we grow is for fermenting. So we don't have to have the earliest salad or a pressure to get a lot of things out in the spring or the early summer. Like we aim to have everything ready in the autumn so that we have time to take care of it and then store it and give it to our members throughout the year.
When people ask me what I do, and I say I make films, and they say, oh, can you make a living doing that? So that's like kind of the most boring question and the most common question that I ever get. But let me just be boring enough to ask that to you, because you run this Förädlad, which, I mean, from a, let's say, a bank's point of view, who were to give you financing or something, it would seem like a terrible idea. Like this is just doesn't scale up, and it doesn't. So, but do you make your living from that, and how does that work?
Yeah. I have a very good life. Like I live in a dream. I mean, this is where I hang out every day. And I eat well, I have a good social life, I have somewhere to live. I live with the fermenting kitchen. We get on well most of the time. And I also am a teacher. So I can't really come around to any other conclusion that I'm making a good living, like a really good living. And I've never died. Like, it's gone well so far. That's also the thing, I think, with this security thing. It's like, have you got any evidence to suggest that it's going to go terribly wrong? Because sometimes, of course I feel that. Sometimes I'm like, I've got no house insurance. Don't tell anyone. But I have no evidence from a scientific perspective to tell me that that's not working out, because it has worked out very well so far. So yes, I make a good living.
I love this video because they were talking about in the video where we are creating food commons from parks. If we were to do such a thing, and I think it'd be great to do that all over the place. He was saying that food has a season and a cycle, and so during winter there's less. And so this particular person has decided that fermenting can help with that to sustain food during the winter and different things. So that's another thing that she came up with, as well as I think that a lot of Europeans have been fermenting for a while, that's some of what they've used to sustain their foods.
What is regenerative agriculture? That's like a word now. But what is it when you explain it?
Regenerative agriculture is coming to a place and making it more alive than it was before. And I think often you use regenerative agriculture in connection to old land that has been in agriculture, which has been, what is that word? Degraded.
Degraded.
Yeah. And regenerative agriculture, I would connect very much with biodynamic agriculture, because that is also the main goal, is to every year improve it. Like every year there's more biodiversity, every year there's more life. Yeah, it's making it better. And also, I think of it as making it better not only for getting more food, but like we can imagine like an environment which is it's living, it's very loud. There's lots of insects and birds, and then there's also a healthy food being produced there.
Zucchini never disappoints.
When I compare the food production that I see at the field next to my house and the one that I see in your garden, the striking difference is diversity or lack thereof. What role does crop diversity play, or what role should crop diversity play in food production?
I think that crop diversity is absolutely fundamental to regenerative agriculture and to the future of a stable food production. Like monoculture, like we have many of just one plant, is incredibly draining on soil, and it's a starvation tactic for animals. Like you have a lot of food at one time and then everything dries up. It's a disaster for insects, and often is sprayed with chemicals to enable that completely unbalanced way of growing to continue. And also, like for me, I have a huge problem with different insects that attack cabbage, and a lot of them are due to the fact that around this area there are many people who grow monocultures of rapeseed. There's absolutely no question, of course, we need a huge diversity of crops. We need many more different kinds of vegetables also, and many more different kinds of grains. We've minimized, we've lost so many species, so many varieties of plants just within the last 100 years. It's like there's never enough diversity. That's my feeling. Like even in my garden, where it looks very diverse compared to a rape field. God, it sounds very bad when I say that in English, but that's what it's called.
Is that the proper name for it? Just an old field of rape.
It's an old field of soil rape. Yeah, exactly. I think I know that there is no future for the large-scale industrial farming model. And we all know it, even though we're still forging on, like through the Amazon, and because we've already destroyed all of Europe, mostly. No, that was dramatic. Destroyed. No, we haven't destroyed Europe. But we've done a lot of deforesting and degradation already. And now we're helping those things continue in parts of the world that we don't see. And that's a dark, dark future. And it's completely unnecessary. That is bewildering and very disheartening often, I think. When it's so clear to everyone, I feel like it must be clear to everyone now that this is very bad. Yeah. So yes and no. Like I don't see the exact route, but I also feel like it would be beneficial if we started making those the future stories more than the dystopian mega cities with mega pig breeding, whatever horrible, nightmarish scenarios that people are willing to paint as a future, which is completely open, the future. I find that bewildering. And I think it's interesting, like with gardening, where it's not actually me that does the work. I just provide the environment. Like I don't create beans. I'm so very far from knowing how to do that. I just make a space where beans can manifest themselves. And it's the same with fermentation, that I don't do the fermentation. I don't change raw beans into fermented beans that are sour and keep for a very long time. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just chopping vegetables and adding salt in a way that is very suitable for lactic acid bacteria. It's a part of the natural world which humans in the recent past have been incredibly afraid of, even though we're always surrounded by bacteria and mushrooms and viruses and everything. But we've become obsessively afraid of it. And fermentation is a very quick way to move away from that fear. Like, you leave food on surfaces at room temperature for days or weeks or even months, and then you eat it without heating it or doing anything else. It's completely different. And now I've started making cheese, and that actually was pushing my boundaries. I made cheese, and I made this shelf because I have a friend who's a cheesemaker in Ireland, Vincenzo. And then they went moldy, like, I mean, really, really moldy. Like, there was colors. First there was white and then a bit of green, but there was also black and there was pink. And I sent a picture to him. I was like, no, it's too far. And he's like, no, I just cut off the outside. It's probably delicious. And I almost didn't. I almost was like, I've reached my limit. But it was amazing. It was totally delicious. But yeah, what was I trying to say? I can't remember. Got lost in the cheese. Generally, I avoid in my mind thinking about good or bad or wrong and right. We have had a trajectory that has been incredibly destructive. And I think more and more people are actively and consciously trying to engage with that difficulty. I hope that the future is something beyond my capacity to imagine it. I hope it's beautiful, but I don't want to spend too much time trying to make it before it happens. Like, so that's a non-answer, kind of. But to stay with the trouble, like, to be able and to give space to the enormous difficulty of seeing what's happening and stay with it. And things will change.
The wind blows, the sun shines, the birds sing in the tree above me, the tree above me.
I thought she had some amazing points about being able to stay with the trouble, being able to start creating from a place that's really beautiful, to looking in and being willing to do what it takes and go there and re-establish your relationship, your right relationship, and being willing to throw out all this stuff that's just not working. And I mean, she was living without money, you know, And she was making a good living because life was good. And life had so many possibilities, and we didn't have to make market pressure on the for farming or growing vegetables, growing and allowing other people that don't have access to have food with this commons, creating a net of safety around us wherever we go for all, and then we partake in that net of safety also. Just a beautiful thing. So we can feel like the rug isn't going to go out from under us. And then what are the alternatives, than getting wrapped up in being dependent on all of these things outside of ourselves when we don't feel any modicum of safety at all? How can we start creating that feeling that we're okay and we can be okay and everything can be okay by aligning with this natural process of nature? How can we do it together? How can we start breathing into that and connecting with our fellow friends and comrades and start those projects and start conceiving of something that could be very beautiful, that could happen organically, that could bring the old and the young together, that could make a place for everyone and their genius gifts in alignment, slowing down again and appreciating and being creative again, being in your natural place, being in your presence. So our group will later get together and just start talking about some of this. But I hope that today has inspired some of you, or all of you, even more. I hope that that we can do something. We can stop wearing polyester. We can start thinking about, getting together with other people that do things, and even making clothes for us and getting to know them, and having everything be a beautiful dance. That this life of barreling through and just going and punching a clock and having no relationship to anything might not be the best thing for us. It's certainly not usually creating the feeling of stability and connection. So what I'm going to do is, I think we're quite over our time limit. We're going to end this with ceremony, and then we'll stay on for those who want to share and do a little bit more. All right, so I riam in you, I gwach na fleisch, I salshish grenu, in yellen agyali, in aljacht tina, in mira lasrach, in luas guia, nivnacht faraga, in munshas fakt talun, in naigana karaga. I arise today through the strength of heaven, through the light of the sun and the brilliance of the moon, in the splendor of fire, through the speed of lightning, the swiftness of wind, the depth of the sea, the stability of earth, and the firmness of rock. And through that, I live. And I pass to you, Deborah.
We are here, here, here. We are here, here. We are here, here, here. We are here, here. Incamagia, Mishakomikwe. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We are here, here, here. 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 Incamagia, Mishomekwe. We are here, we are here, here, here. We are here, here. We are here, here, here. We are here. Incamagia, Miss Comicwe. We are here, here, here. 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 We are here. Incamagia, Mr. Comicwe. We are here, here.
That was a song from Mother Earth. Our closing.
And I pass to Cynthia.
Dziękuję Celi Kironki. I give thanks to you, the four directions, and I pass back to center.
And our beautiful fire keeper, who is in ceremony herself, will not be doing the ceremony right now, but I will take over for her. So, Grandfather Fire, Grandmother Earth, we unite you sacreds in holy union that you may bring about purification in your midst. So once again, we purify ourselves. And thank everyone that's been here, that continues to be here on this planet. We have our life, and with that life, we can choose to make life-affirming choices. We can choose to come together, and we can choose to birth the dream that has been in our hearts for so long, the one we know innately and deeply, that resonates with our very being. Let us give ourselves permission to start that and to bring it into fruition. I thank all of you for being here. And may we all be a resource for each other in the most beautiful way and be in sacred relationship with each other. We will be having events in the future where we discuss this more, doing projects together, and where we start to talk about some of the things that we can do together, but also clarify who we are truly on this planet and and clear anything that is kind of a misnomer, anything that we have kind of taken in as ourselves that's not real, anything that is in society that's not functioning correctly, and look at that and see truly what is in harmony, not as a conversion, but as an actuality. And in that, we will come to some beautiful conclusions together. I'm seeing that people are looking for titles of videos and things. I will talk to you after we finish about all of that. And if you're watching this video in hindsight, we will have some of the links in the video so you can watch it. And you can watch the videos that we have shown later. All right, very good, everyone. And what I'm going to do now is say thank you and close this sacred circle in behalf of Patricia and some of the others that were here today. And I hope you are all well. Please put your email in the chat if you would like to stay in touch with us, and sign up on some of the links that we have put in the chat. They should be closer to the top with our Facebook group, our YouTube channel, and our website. Happy Earth Day, everyone, and we can do this. This is not about waiting for power to bestow dignity to us, but rather taking our power back and moving congruently and working towards that. I know it's not going to happen instantly. We're all doing our own inner process of finding the way and listening to source. But together we can support each other. Take care. And I raise my hands to you because we are the ones that have the opportunity to do the right thing and act in a loving way and be humane. Take care. And I will sign off on our live stream now.